2023. This meeting will be conducted in person and as a courtesy via remote means in accordance with applicable law. Please note that while an option for remote attendance and/or participation is being provided as a courtesy to the public and board members, the meeting will not be suspended or terminated if technological problems interrupt the virtual broadcast unless required by law. This meeting will be recorded by pac-tv. Members of the public who wish to watch the meeting may do so by viewing the Duxbury Government Access channels, Verizon 39 or Comcast 9. Viewers can visit pactv.org/Duxbury for information about Duxbury programming, including streaming and watching replays on Duxbury YouTube. With that, I call this meeting to order, and our first item on the agenda is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The next item is open forum. If any member of the public or board member wishes to bring up an item they'd like on a future agenda, you may do so at this point. I just ask that you curtail your comments as much as possible. We can't respond to them because it's not on the agenda, and that's about it. If any board members, I'll start first, have any open forum items.
Just two quick things. First, thanks to everyone who participated in the Memorial Day ceremonies, including Duxbury American Legion Post 223, who, as usual, handled the flags at the cemetery, and all the volunteers who participated. I also want to congratulate Duxbury High Class of 2024, and thanks to the DHS faculty and staff for a well-organized ceremony this past Saturday. Thank you.
Any members of the public? Nobody moving? We'll move on. New business. The fire department has a presentation of awards as follows, and I will hand this over to the chief.
Good evening.
Hi, Rob. See you.
Thank you for having us. Experience and time on the job as a firefighter are both invaluable. Senior members provide crucial experience and knowledge to younger firefighters, helping them to learn and excel in their roles. The state of Massachusetts recognizes and honors firefighters who complete 20 years of service and every 5 years thereafter. The work the firefighters do is challenging, and we deeply value the dedication and time they commit to this noble profession. Tonight, I would like to recognize two of our firefighters for the years of service to Duxbury and present them with the Massachusetts Career Firefighter Service Awards. First, I would like to introduce to you firefighter EMT William Buzz Wadsworth, Jr. He was appointed a career firefighter on September 13, 1999. He is assigned to Shift 2. He's a member of our Honor Guard. He's been involved in this department from a very young age with his father, Captain Bill Wadsworth, who served on this department for many years. Tonight, we are presenting him with his 25 Years of Service Award. I'd like to welcome Buzz Wadsworth up.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Very much. Absolutely. Congratulations.
Thank you very much for your service. Thank you. See you on the field. You got it.
Next, I would like to recognize firefighter paramedic Michael Gillis. He was appointed a call firefighter on June 15, 2004, and a career firefighter on September 6, 2011. He is assigned to Shift 3. He is a member of the Public Education team. Tonight, we are presenting him with his 20 Years of Service Award. I'd like to welcome Michael Gillis up.
Thanks for having me.
Congratulations.
Stay there.
Thank you very much. Congratulations.
Congratulations. Thank you for your
Thanks for
service.
having me. Thanks for you.
Chief, you're going to need some more hash marks for the budget.
Yeah. I'll be asking for them in August, or I come to see you. No,
Don't say it.
we can discuss that. I am fortunate to lead a remarkable group of firefighters who possess immeasurable compassion and incredible skill. The public seldom hears about the difference they make in people's lives like I do. They perform miracles on a regular basis. Our customers are our biggest supporters because they witness firsthand what a team of highly trained firefighters can achieve. Our firefighters don't see themselves as heroes. They view this as the job they signed up for. As a department, we don't tally all the lives saved because that is our duty, and we would be awarding medals weekly. However, on May 15, 2024, firefighter Scott Hill exemplified our mission while off duty at a pickup hockey game in Pembroke. When a player on the opposing team collapsed, firefighter Hill immediately skated over, began CPR. Collaborating with another off-duty Braintree firefighter, they utilized an AED, and within minutes, the victim was talking to Scott. Scott is also a call firefighter in Plimpton, and I would like to welcome up Plimpton Fire Chief Duddy so we can both present Scott with his award. I'm going to hand this over to you if you'd like, as I keep going. So I'd like to ask Scott to join us up here. So this is in recognition of his life-saving actions. I am honored to present Scott Hill with a life-saving award. And the citation reads, in recognition of your swift thinking, decisive actions, and life-saving interventions while off duty.
All right.
Proud of you, buddy.
Congratulations. Thank you for your service.
Hey, folks, say hi.
This incident highlights the importance of bystander CPR and early defibrillation. Our department is committed to teaching bystander CPR to as many residents as we can. Thank you for the opportunity to recognize the great work all of our firefighters are doing. Have a good night.
Great.
Thank you.
1 second, Chief. Chief, I just wanted to give a personal thank you. We had a close call at my home, and I saw firsthand the professionalism of your staff, the men and women that came to my house. Not only helped put the fire out and protect my house from major damage, but also comforted my family. It's a scary thing having a fire. So I
We're glad
appreciate
to help you. Glad no serious injuries, and it wasn't too bad.
it. Yeah, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much. Thank you all.
I do too.
There's nobody at
Feel like
lunch.
the best.
I'm going to ask you afterwards.
Yeah. All right, so now we have a joint meeting with the PFAS Working Group and Water and Sewer Advisory Board for a presentation by Weston and Sampson of final PFAS source and hydrogeological evaluation regarding the town landfill and the McNeil dump. I don't know who will be leading. Oh, here we go. You could just introduce yourself. And
Yes, thanks. Tough to follow that, that's for sure. That was awesome. Sean Healy, I'm an LSP team leader with Weston and Sampson. We are here to present our findings, our final findings of our PFAS source and hydrogeological evaluation of the McNeil landfill and the Duxbury Municipal landfill. And I have with us online here Kevin McKinnon, who's our senior hydrogeologist with Weston and Sampson. And he led the evaluation. He presented back in October to the select board most of the findings. We did some additional work since that presentation in October, and now have some final recommendations that he can go over in the presentation. So I'll leave it to Kevin. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Thanks. And could someone bring up the presentation material, please? Sorry I couldn't be with you tonight. My wife had some surgery today and I needed to be here in the house um, supporting her in her recovery. But happy to bring you guys up to speed on what's transpired since October. And I will say, as Sean mentioned, that we did go over, I'd say about 90% of the evaluation was complete back in October. So, whoa, hold on, sorry. My apologies. Home life with dogs and sick wives. So subsequent to our finishing that presentation in October, we did submit a final report to you all in February, which provided the recommendations that I'll present to you today. And then subsequent to that, there was another contract that we had just put together to provide some additional support to follow up with some of these recommendations. And we signed that contract in May, last month. If I could have the next slide, please. Or the next slide. So again, my name is Kevin McKinnon. I'm basically the lead hydrogeologist here at Weston and Sampson and lead a team of 20 people, about 5 of which worked on this particular project. Next slide, please. And to remind you all, as I'm sure you're involved in a number of different projects, I thought I'd just restate the purpose of this investigation. Last year, it was identified that many of your, or at least 4 of your public water supply wells have been impacted by PFAS. And at that time, there was definitely a lack of understanding of the potential sources, the distribution in the superficial aquifer, and the fate of PFAS that had been identified in those town drinking water supply wells. So at that time, the main contributor was expected to be the Duxbury landfill and the dump site upgrading of both Depot and the Partridge Road well. And so some samples had been taken at that time, both around the dump site and the landfill, as well as at all the public drinking water supply wells. Next slide, please. I will, say right out of the gate here that I do have quite a few slides here, many of which I had provided to you before. So I don't intend to go in detail across every one of them, but I did want to, show them here just as a reminder, and if anything comes up, be able to answer any questions. So back in October, I had provided kind of an evaluation of looking at what the potential contamination sources across the entire town were, looked at a number of different databases to understand where sources could be emanating from in town other than the landfill and the McNeil dump. And then we conducted some numerical groundwater modeling, both in steady state and in transient, and a variety of different simulations, understanding that, and I will conclude with this too, that the aquifer is very sensitive to which wells are pumping and at what rates they're pumping. I'll get into more of that in a little detail later. So we did delineate capture zones for each of the 4 wells discussed, and we also identified potential sources and the fate of these potential sources if they are indeed contributing PFAS to the aquifer. And then a subsequent analysis that hadn't been presented in October was an evaluation of non-point sources across town. And that specifically is the Title V septic systems in town. Next slide, please. So at the last study, I had identified quite a few pages and a long list of potential contamination sources. And at the end of our study, we kind of focused on these 4, which we believe are potentially, and I'll keep using the word potentially, the main sources of PFAS contamination in the aquifer. Most of the work completed here is planning level, it's modeling. There needs to be some follow-up to improve on the data understanding with subsequent sampling as confirmatory samples to identify whether these are actual contamination sources or still potential contamination sources. Next slide, please. So the aquifer model that we used was developed by the U.S. Geological Survey. Again, it's a very large model domain, 290 square miles. And then to bring your attention to the 3D nature of this groundwater system, it has a vertical discretization of about 8 different layers. So those layers are comprised of different thicknesses to be able to understand what the different aquifer properties throughout those vertical layers might be. And then horizontally, it's discretized into 200 by 200 foot cells so that we can understand flow from cell to cell to cell, both horizontally and vertically. Next slide, please. So this is the kind of an image of the northern section of this model, specifically in Duxbury. So if we zoom out, we kind of look at a mound within the center, northwestern center of town, around the 120 contour. That's a contour of groundwater elevation. And our study basically focused on the eastern part of town around the Duxbury landfill and down gradient. So consisting of the Evergreen, Depot, and Partridge Street wells, Partridge Road wells. I think the next slide, please, shows kind of the focus of our investigation. But you basically can understand that groundwater, as you might expect, is flowing from high to low, from west to east as it heads towards its discharge location in the ocean. And then what I'm showing here is our focused investigation around those 4 wells and some of the potential contamination sources that we've identified in one of the previous slides, consisting of the 2 landfills, the carpet cleaning service, and potentially the Duxbury Fire Department. Next slide, please. We attempted to conduct some fingerprinting to basically match the samples that were taken at the public water supply wells with the landfill and the McNeil dump. I will say that the samples are probably not as robust as we need with respect to the number of samples that have been taken. So the analysis is incomplete and I think inconsistent and doesn't directly point the finger at the dump and the landfill as the source of the PFAS for the public drinking water supply wells. I would definitely say that it contributes, but I can't point the finger with this analysis to say that it is the sole source of PFAS to these public drinking water supply wells. And I'll probably say next slide quite a few times over the next few slides because this is the sampling that was conducted in and around the municipal landfill. For those familiar with PFAS constituents, it does have a little bit of PFDA and PFNA, some of the longer chain constituents of PFAS. And we're not really seeing those at as high a concentration at the public drinking water supply wells. The shorter chains do typically have a higher mobility caused by a high aqueous solubility and relatively low absorption. So you might expect as the further away we get from a potential source, the less long chain you might see. So that might be an indication that it's not reaching the public drinking water supply wells if this is indeed the source. Next slide, please. And this is just showing some of the additional monitoring wells around the McNeil dump. Has a significant contribution of PFOS, PFOS, which we didn't necessarily see in terms of the ratios down gradient at the public drinking water supply wells. Next slide, please. So again, I'm probably going to skip through quite a few of these slides, but this just brings attention to which wells we were modeling, the permitted rates at which they were run in the model, and the model layer that they reside, because they are, as I mentioned, this is a 3-dimensional model, and those screens for each of these public drinking water supply wells are located at different elevations throughout the aquifer. And I will also mention that these permitted rates can be significantly different than the actual rates that are run on a daily basis through these wells. Next slide, please. A number of simulations were conducted, as I mentioned, both in steady state. Steady state is basically where the pumping rates would basically remain exactly the same throughout the entire simulation. A transient run is one in which rates will be changed in connection with how the wells were actually run. So we ran a transient run from 218 to 2022 using the pumping rates given to me by Mark for the actual rates. So we were curious as to what would happen if you turned Partridge on again, because the plumes do migrate a little bit differently given which wells are pumping and at what rates. The next slide will kind of give you an understanding as to a big picture. This is a simulation where all wells were pumping at their permitted rates. And what we did was to seed particles around each of the public drinking water supply wells, run the model in reverse to understand the capture zone of each of those public drinking water supply wells. So the result is shown in this purple hatching crosshatch, which is identifying the capture zones of the Depot, the Partridge, and both Evergreen wells. So that's where the water's coming from for each of those wells. In addition, we ran the model forwards from the potential contamination sources to try to find if those potential contamination sources did indeed end up at the pumping well. And if so, what was the contribution of water to those wells? And that would give us a better understanding of the mass balance of the system, meaning if only 10% of the water from the McNeil dump contributed to, let's say, Depot, for example, and the concentration started at 100, we might expect the concentration to be about 10 at Depot. So I did provide all of those simulations in subsequent slides, but as presented back in October, I don't think you guys want to sit through all of those. So I'm going to have you forward past the next, I think, 5 or 6 slides, please. This gives you an example of how we ran each and every potential model run. And this, stop here, please. This is the final kind of transient run in which we ran the wells exactly how they were pumped over the last 5 years. The table, or a graph, I should say, at the top of the page gives an understanding of how each well was pumped. Evergreen number 1, 2, Depot, and Partridge in terms of pumping rate on the y-axis. For this particular year, this is the 5th year of the model run. So you can see that Evergreen 1 and 2 were pumping, but both Depot and Partridge were essentially off during these years. And we're looking at the potential plumes with respect to the path lines that started at the Duxbury landfill and the McNeil dump. And we also seeded particles around another potential contamination source being the Duxbury Fire Department, and another potential contamination source being the carpet cleaning service. A lot of these particles, you can't see this in plan view, but they dive into the aquifer, slowly getting deeper and deeper. And then the Bluefish River acts as a sink, which means it draws water up from the depths, and it's a discharge location for most of the water in this region. So it's ultimately a discharge location potentially for some of the PFAS in this region as well. Next slide, please. Again, now we're finally getting to some of the new information that I haven't presented to you yet. Next slide, please. Which is to say that there are other potential sources of PFAS in town. And they're not all point sources. Some of them are non-points, and really the only one is the Title V septic systems. Next slide, please. So I worked with Mark to try to understand which parts of town were on sewer so that we could remove those potential Title V systems from this evaluation. So what you see here is just a map of Duxbury with each black dot is representative of what we believe would be a septic system. because we removed certain areas of town that did not have septic systems. Next slide, please. And we tried to run basically a septic system density map to understand where the clusters of septic systems might be contributing higher concentrations of PFAS. It's been well documented that PFAS is being discharged into wastewater systems across the United States, specifically in septic systems, as they are untreated. And I guess you would think that if in a higher concentration of septic systems, you might have higher concentrations of PFAS associated with that in that part of town. Next slide, please. So if we were to consider overlaying the capture zones of Partridge Road, for example, Partridge Road well on this map, you can see that the capture zone for this particular well under a Partridge well and Evergreen well pumping condition, it does bring in water from a fairly highly densely populated area with more septic systems than the rest of town. So with that, I would consider that Partridge specifically is probably more impacted by septic system than anything else. And that's pretty much the only new revelation since October. Next slide, please. So basically, in conclusion, we do believe that the landfill dump plume path is highly sensitive to the magnitude of pumping rates from the public drinking water supply wells. We showed huge variations when wells were pumping at 50% of their capacity versus 100% of their permitted capacity. Huge variations when wells were shut off. That does change the migration and the pattern of the particles in the model. So I think that conclusion in itself prompted us to make a recommendation that you'll see in the next slide, that is to work with your consulting engineers, your water engineers, that mostly Ryan, that are putting together treatment options and operational strategy moving forward with your water system. So we as I said, recommend kind of confirming a lot of the planning level evaluation that has been conducted here. And to do that, we recommend developing a groundwater monitoring and sampling program, which would include installation of shallow and deep monitoring wells, down gradient and upgrading of the landfill, collecting additional PFAS samples from existing monitoring wells, as well as some proposed monitoring wells, and then as well as a couple of surface water samples in the Bluefish River itself. And as recommended last time, use this model in concert with proposed engineering considerations to assist with your decision-making moving forward. Next slide, please. To get a little bit more specific, and this is a little excerpt out of the report, we did propose a monitoring network with some priorities, meaning we tried to identify where we thought the high priority sites or locations within the down gradient areas of the landfill for sampling. So this map has a lot of different colors on it. What I want you to take away from it, there are a number of sites that already exist. So the yellow wells are locations of existing monitoring wells. There are some red and blue wells. Red would be the higher priority wells that we recommend installing for sampling in the shallow and deep aquifer. And then some blue wells to also make that program a little bit more robust so that we can fully understand the nature and extent of PFAS across the entire town. Clearly link some of these sources to sources of PFAS to the drinking water supply wells. Right now, everything I'm saying is potential, right? Has not been confirmed. Additional sampling would be required. Next slide, please. And this is just a table. I don't need to go into detail. I try to explaining the purpose of each monitoring well, whether it's a high priority or a low priority. Next slide, please. And that's all. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. I'll start with board members. I'll go right to left this time. Fernando, do you have anything?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty good work here, excellent work. I mean, we suspected that septic systems were the cause for the Partridge Street contamination, and looks like your work has confirmed that. So that's good. The only thing is that in this final graph here, you got the carpet cleaning services again. There isn't any carpet cleaning services there, so I just. As far as I know, right? There's no carpet cleaning in.
No, there was.
There was.
Yeah.
There was.
There was.
I don't believe that's
No?
true.
I don't remember it. I've been here 30, do you remember?
Yeah.
No.
I would have used it.
So I can
Yeah,
provide
sure.
a little information
Yeah.
on that. So, yeah, that was from research from, what's the code?
NAICS.
The
NAICS.
Yeah, so in that database, it actually came up with an address, and it's a historic carpet cleaning location. And actually, I think Candace, who's on the board, actually has a photograph of the location, and the address was 47 Depot Street. And I think Candace actually spoke
They cleaned it
with
out of the front
somebody
yard
who operated that facility, and they were washing carpets out in the front lawn
So it's
a couple years ago.
house.
So it's not there anymore,
Right.
but it was there previously, so it
Wow.
did exist, and
Okay.
it is accurate with the code that was identified, with the database
All
that
right.
we identified.
Okay, thank you for that.
So it is real.
All right. And it's also good because the final comment, just a comment, is that this study kind of reveals and demonstrates the impact of offtake from the public water supply and how it affects the plume, right? That will be very helpful in our prioritization work that this will be used for. So that's good.
Let's also remember that it's potential. Potential is important.
Yeah,
You know, we haven't identified it as a source.
sure.
So it's a
There's potential. Yeah.
Another potential site that I'm not clear if you were made aware of is apparently, I've been told that at the old Clipper site on South Station Street, there was many years ago, a business that stripped, it was called a stripping business, and it used to strip, I think, like shutters and furniture and.
Yeah. Refurbished
It
furniture
was
and-
very much known for having a lot of drums of stuff on site there. So I don't know if that was looked into. And it's probably, I'm sure it's private property. I'm not sure if it is possible to look into that and try to assess if that could be a potential contamination site. I do see the wisdom in trying to figure out where this stuff, if there's a real concentration of the PFAS and PFOA, it would be helpful, I think, to our cause to find out where that is.
Sure. And you said it was Clipper business?
It was where the old Clipper, do you know the address of that, Susanna? The original, the.
The corner of Depot and
Depot
South
and
Station
South
Street.
Station, yeah.
It's right in Partridge.
Okay.
It's unfortunate back when you were doing the research of past businesses that somebody didn't remember that one.
Yeah, it didn't, that wouldn't have come up on the database search, Kevin?
It should have come up
Yeah.
on the database.
Yeah.
11 South
because
Station is the address.
We can certainly check it out, though. And if you're suggesting that it has a land use like you suggested, it should be in a DEP database as well that we could check.
I believe it's turned residential at this point. I'm not sure it's being even used as any type of a business. It was our local newspaper headquarters for quite a long time. It's being used as offices now.
Okay.
Brian?
Thanks, yes. So Kevin, can you take me through a little bit more specifically on slides 10 and 11? showing the source investigation. You made reference to doing some, I think you called it seeding as part
Yes.
of, can you take me through that? So what I'm getting at is one of the recommendations you're making at the end is that we install a number of monitoring wells. And I hope we get into the potential cost on that and what we expect it to tell us. So before we get to the recommendation, I just want to back up and dig a little more on what these illustrations are showing us. So was there some sort of physical element you put into the ground and tracked it to result in these lines?
So reservoir.
So the mod flow is a numerical groundwater modeling program that develops the flow characteristics of the aquifer and would produce the groundwater contours that you saw on the map. There is a subsequent module called mod path that allows you to seed a particle, and meaning put particles around a particular source and then run the model to identify where those particles would flow to, given the groundwater characteristics that were produced in the mod flow model. So if you're running the model forward, they would flow down gradient to give you an understanding as where water is flowing, and understanding that PFAS is basically, and is soluble in water, it flows with the water. So those particles are giving you an indication as to where PFAS may be flowing from a potential source.
All right, let me stop you there, because I think this is where I'm maybe not understanding. So this is a hypothetical thing that you're dropping into the model. This is not a physical object you're actually tracking through the groundwater. That's my question.
That's correct.
Okay,
That's
and that's
correct.
why you're asking for the monitoring well, so we can actually track this in real life, so to speak, to see if it matches what the models are saying.
Yeah.
Okay, all right, got it,
Yeah,
thank
it's
you.
history matching, they call it.
All right, thank you.
Cindy?
Well, Brian raised the issue but didn't follow up about the cost of these monitoring wells. I was curious if you have a ballpark figure there for like the most
Yeah.
important, for the red ones, for instance.
Right, yeah, so year before this last town meeting, there was an article for this hydro-geo evaluation. And we had an allowance in there for, I think it was 5 or 6 different cluster wells, and we recommend 6 in these conclusions and recommendations. So the costs for that were covered in the allowance from the town meeting year ago.
So the cost for the wells, monitoring wells that
Yep.
you're recommending has already been covered?
Yes, we had a budget for that, yeah.
Been appropriated.
It was appropriated, yeah.
Can I just ask a follow-up on her? So on these monitoring wells, and thank you for raising the cost again, I noticed on your chart, these appear to be somewhat close to the public way. So are these going to be theoretically put into public-owned property, so we're not looking for easements or licenses or that sort of thing?
Yes, that would be
Okay, perfect.
ideal, yeah.
Thank
I
you.
mean, they're approximate locations, so we got to kind of
Okay.
figure all that out.
Yep.
But that would be what we want.
But we don't want to be waiting on folks to give us permission necessarily to use their land. We're going to use publicly available land that's already in the area.
Right.
Okay, great.
May I follow up on that as well?
You may.
Just as a follow-up and kind of a proactive approach to these types of monitoring wells moving forward, and something that I think we can do as a town, either in the subdivision rules and regs or the bylaw, both, and in our 40B applications and permits that are granted, is that we can require subdivision developers to install these monitoring wells, and that saves the taxpayer the cost of these moving forward. Would you recommend that as a proactive approach to keeping us monitored as we move forward?
Sure, I think depending on the location, being proactive and having an idea what you have in town is always a good idea, sure.
Yeah, having the well there would be, would give you the flexibility as to whether you needed to sample it or not, but
Yeah.
if it was
Right,
there.
just having them there, and certainly that can be part of any application. It can just be written into the subdivision rules and regs. Or, again, a comprehensive permit is all negotiated, and I can't imagine that that provision would make that, that project uneconomical. So I think we should start to think of the, for the future on how we can cover these costs. Thank you.
I wanted to follow up on one point early in the presentation. You talked about a May contract. What was that for, and what was how much, I guess is the best. I know that some money was appropriated, but I was just wondering what it was for and where we are.
Do you want to grab that one, Kevin?
Sure. Yeah, the May contract was specifically for, it's kind of a broad brush, additional hydrogeological services. And the intent is for us to work with Ryan at EPG as they start to develop priorities with how to evaluate PFAS across town and how they're going to be recommending upgrades to each of the individual facilities, public drinking water supply wells. We can work in iteration back and forth to understand how these changes are going to affect the migration of PFAS in the aquifer.
As part of Article 14, we appropriated money for that, so that is part of the prioritization study. So that's,
Yeah.
it's all
So
part of that
The
appropriation.
modeling to support the prioritization project.
Yep.
I can say that for a couple of years, I've seen these maps with this hydrogeological kind of mapping, and I was just wondering, what's the timeline for wrapping up this piece of the project and moving on to the
For this piece of the project, moving forward
Remediation.
for the next round of cluster wells, I would say we could probably get that done in the next 6 months and get some sampling done, but it's a bit of an iterative process, we'll get the results and then go from there as to recommendations, but,
Because I guess my point is, it seems we have a problem. We have wells that need to be cleaned up.
Yeah.
And I would hope that our focus would be on that as opposed to seeing that we continue to have a problem and don't know where it came from.
That's not the objective of this, Mike. What we're trying to do is set up a geological model that determines and helps us prioritize, right, as it was explained, right? Different wells at different pump rates kind of move the plume in different directions, all right? So this is all part of Article 14, all part of our prioritization project to figure out which wells we're going to do first sequence to address it. We are addressing it. This is not studying for studying's sake. This is part of both Articles 14 and 15 to address and take care of our PFAS contamination and be in compliance with state and federal regulations of the 4 parts per trillion. That's the objective of this, is not to study this to death.
Yes, absolutely.
So we're not just
It's all
focused
to
on ground
support-
flow, we're focused on pumping here too.
Right, yeah, exactly. It's all to support the prioritization and then the remediation of the public water supplies.
That's
Yeah.
hoping to get there.
Yeah,
All right.
absolutely, yes.
Thank you.
So it is moving in that direction,
Thank you.
yeah.
Any
Just
other?
one other thing, yeah.
Go ahead.
You had mentioned, when we were looking at non-point sources, you included septic systems, which of course are all over town. One question I have, and I think we've heard the answer to this before, but I'd be curious, and I want to keep this in the forefront of everybody's mind, is what sorts of things are we finding, what sorts of PFAS elements are we finding coming out of septic systems? How do they get into the systems, and are there things we should ask folks in town maybe to be aware of? Like, hey, please don't flush this, please don't send this down the drain, on sort of a voluntary, in a voluntary way, just to keep things on the top of mind. Obviously, we're not going to be able to do things with the landfills on a voluntary basis. That's going to have to be very direct. But where we have a town-wide contribution, as you call it, non-point source, is there something we can do maybe to stop the the contribution into the groundwater in the first place?
There are certain guidelines that you could potentially follow, but unfortunately, for all of us, it really should stop in the manufacturing process because it's in almost everything that we use. And subsequent to everything that we use ends up going through our bodies and into our wastewater systems. And even, your toothpaste, dental floss, toilet paper just recently. So you certainly can't prevent people from putting toilet paper into the waste system.
To the toilet.
Was it,
South America.
the microwave popcorn, the bags, the reason why when it pops in there, the reason why the popcorn is a stick-to bag because it's lined with PFAS. So maybe we can stop microwaving popcorn, maybe.
No, I get
maybe
that. I
an
just wonder if there's any
alternate.
low-hanging fruit, like, wow, these things are always, they're always going to the septic system. They're large contributors, and they really don't need to be there. But
I fear they're gonna,
Yep.
tell us that it's in hair conditioner, and then you can blame me for half of the pollution in town, probably.
not me.
It's in 97% of the people in this country.
To Brian's point, is there any benefit to pumping out your septic tanks?
Yeah, there you go.
Unless you kill the inhabitants of the house.
From this perspective, I know there's other benefits to it, but on the PFAS, does it help this situation?
To pump out your septic system?
Yeah.
Like annually or whatever it is. I mean,
Yeah, the water is essentially leaching out through that septic system, through that sludge that gets left behind, discharging into the groundwater aquifer. I'm sure that it could potentially limit or decrease the overall discharge of PFAS in the aquifer if you were to pump out more frequently. I wouldn't say that it would be a negative effect. It certainly could help.
we're trying.
Yeah.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up to that, I was wondering, have towns or people, have they encouraged towns to put in their own septic systems as opposed to having individual systems so that the effluent could then be managed in a different way, or is that just draconian? Town sewer, I'm saying, would town sewer fix it in the heavily populated area that you've highlighted?
Regulations have still not come out on the wastewater side of this equation to help with that process. So there are a number of centralized wastewater systems across Massachusetts and the country, as you know, where PFAS treatment is currently not required. So, we're unfortunately solving it on the water side of the equation, where we're pumping it out of the ground, where often it was discharged into the ground from the wastewater system. So there's one component of this cycle that hasn't been broken yet. And the water systems are currently on the hook for spending the money on the treatment, not the wastewater systems yet.
Just for the record, could you just name and
Betsy Sullivan, Washington Street,
thank you very much.
contributor.
We have another comment from the audience. If you state your name, a couple more. Name, street. Thank you.
My name is Bo Boynton. I live on Russell Road in Duxbury, and I'm on the Duxbury Water and Sewer Advisory Board. I'm really hoping that Sean can find us a smoking gun. Maybe I'm being really optimistic, but I feel that Duxbury has a smoking gun. I reached out to the town of Kingston water superintendent. They have a large concentration of on-site wastewater Title V systems. They do have a little bit more town sewer than we do, but still the rural areas of Kingston has on-site septic systems. All of their drinking water wells have zero or non-detect PFAS in them. Kingston has absolutely no concern of PFAS, absolutely no PFAS contamination. And so for me, and my professional opinion is, I feel that we have a contaminant source here in town, and I'm really hoping Sean can find it. Thanks.
All right.
Candace Martin, 59 Gurnett Road. The potential sources that were identified, including the landfill and the dump, and we talked about septic systems, but the fire department was also listed as a source. Is there means and methods? I know they still need to do the training, just where they do the training and cleaning. Is there an opportunity still to look at that, and has that been considered?
Brian might be able to remind me of this, but I believe when we went to Plymouth County Advisory Board meeting, they were talking about having a regional site for fire training. Wasn't that correct?
That sounds right.
Yeah. So,
We stopped using those PFAS containing chemicals 15, 20 years ago.
yeah.
We haven't used them in ages.
So,
They were banned.
Yeah.
well, that's an answer too. We don't use them.
But it's still a potential contamination source, and it is included in our recommended monitoring plan.
Correct.
All right.
Hi, Jim Begley, Elm Street. Couple of things, just in big picture first. One thing that we can all do is put pressure on state legislators to move Massachusetts forward to join other states that are starting to ban products with PFAS or certain PFAS compounds. I think it's in early days of that, but I think it's something that needs to happen over time. And that's really ultimately what has to be done to end this problem in the future. With regard to firefighter training and firefighting foam, there's a number of different sources of PFAS associated with firefighter training and firefighter activities. Their turnout gear itself has been heavily laden with PFAS in the past. I'm not sure of its current situation, but just the washing of that gear back at the station could be a significant potential source of PFAS and should be looked at. The foams that are used today, although they don't have some of the worst known PFAS compounds, they have other PFAS compounds, and some of those are precursors. By a precursor, it means it can form the more toxic PFAS in the environment once it's released. So foam is not good today. It's still a problem. Not as bad as it was, but it's still a problem. I had a question, actually, that was first on my mind to come up here with regard to the septic systems. Has there been an investigation of the level of nitrate, which is a compound found commonly in septic systems, leaching from septic systems? Have you looked at correlating nitrate concentration with PFAS concentration at various wells?
Have we? No. That wasn't part of our investigation, but I have done that same evaluation in other communities, and we have seen some good results. Well, not good results for the community, but good results in terms of correlating PFAS with nitrogen concentrations.
It's something I was aware of as a potential issue, and I had taken a look at that in some of the groundwater database. And the Parker Street well, for instance, had some of the highest nitrate concentrations in Duxbury. So there could be a correlation between the two, and it's worth looking at. And nitrate's a very inexpensive test. PFAS is an expensive test, so it could be used to do some screening if you're looking for septic-related sources. The other thing I wanted to ask was with regard to the combined septic systems. You know, you eliminated certain parts of town because the septic systems aren't leaching. They're being pumped to some other location. But did you consider those other locations and where those are? Because that water is being discharged somewhere else, and possibly at, and at much higher volume, and possibly a concentrated source of PFAS in the vicinity of where those combined systems are leaching.
We did, and they're not upgrading of the public drinking water supply wells.
Great, okay. That's all I
Can I
had.
follow up on that, because it does lend to there was, out near Camp Wing, there used to be a place where the trucks, the septic pumping trucks used to discharge all of the effluent into these big pits out there. Was that source looked at?
I don't know where that is, Ben.
That was
It's on Keene Street,
Keene Street, yeah, it was
Near
used for
the,
many, many years.
near the playground over there.
Across the street. Yeah, that area on the maps looked like it was pretty green versus,
It's certainly fertile.
yeah. housing
Again, I
development
mean,
out there.
I'm hoping, just on Bo's comment, and that, you know, if there's a smoking gun, are we still going to have an opportunity to look for that? Or are we moving past that?
We could take, we could
We
definitely,
don't have a specific scope of work to continue to identify and look for sources, but we can certainly add that to the scope.
I think it
Costs
might be,
money.
I understand it costs money, but we have two possible, and maybe looking at the map, it doesn't make sense to look at the Keene Street, but maybe it does make sense to just look into the old Clipper site, the stripping business.
sure. Sure, we could take a look at those locations.
Yeah, they're downstream, right? Yeah, which is the key.
All right. Any other questions? Oh, Tanya.
Hi, Tanya Trevison, Tinker's Ledge Road. I had a question regarding liability when you were talking about the old Clipper building, and I know that we had joined the lawsuit with regard to 3M, and I don't think we ever heard about the resolution of that, if we were included in the settlement. And
That's ongoing. Mark's on point with that if you want to respond to that, Mark.
Yeah, I mean, it's not settled
Go,
yet.
go ahead and,
We just finished.
Mark, can you get up to the,
He really doesn't want to.
he doesn't want to at all.
You can tell.
Our cloud water and sewer and superintendent, and they just finished submitting all the paperwork, so it's still in the works.
So we are, the answer is, Mark?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
thank you.
We got in on that one 6 days before the deadline closed.
Probably a broken record. Bo Boynton, 48 Russell Road, Duxbury, Water and Sewer Advisory Board. I'm just really hoping that the McNeil dump site stays on the top of the list. I feel that it's a horrible waste site. It was a dump that took the contents of many 3M factories. I have spent a little time on site. I just think it's a really bad place, and I hope that the hypothesis that the McNeil dump site is contaminating our groundwater is thoroughly thought out, is thoroughly researched, and it's not a source, and by the time that it's absolutely not a source, and these guys have finished what they needed to do beyond the computer modeling, and I hope that you all, as a select board, see that as an importance to allow them to do the research and fund the research to do what we need to do at the McNeil dump site. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you very much for your time tonight. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much.
Are we gonna find out what recent, how recently have we tested the PFAS numbers? How are we doing?
Yeah, so, actually, just getting back to McNeil Dump. So the McNeil Dump assessment is still going to happen. It's still, we have a whole process with the solid waste program that we have to go through in order to close the site out. So there's a whole comprehensive phase 2 assessment that we'll be doing in and around the McNeil Dump, which is additional test pits to delineate the waste off-site, additional soil gas wells around the dump, additional monitoring wells around the dump, and on adjacent properties, and surface water sampling, and a year's worth of groundwater monitoring. And that scope of work for that phase 2 comprehensive site assessment has been in with the DEP since October for review. So the DEP is taking a long time reviewing that scope of work. which has delayed the overall assessment of the McNeil landfill. That, once we get approval on that, which should be soon, we'll be able to start that year-long process of evaluating the McNeil landfill, and then we'll be generating some more groundwater data in and around the landfill, hopefully within the next 6 months, pending DEP approval. One thing DEP has not done is added PFAS sampling to the Duxbury Municipal Landfill Groundwater Monitoring Program. They're okay with the monitoring program right now, which does not include PFAS sampling.
But
Well,
we as a
we-
select board asked for that, sorry.
Yeah, sorry, but we've sampled our own Duxbury
We
landfill,
did
and there's
back,
PFAS in it.
yes, we did do that back in
Yeah.
2022, yes.
But this board asked for, I believe, quarterly testing of all the wells as well as the dump, and that's what I was asking for, the latest results on that.
Yes, so Mark's going to step up again.
Okay.
Reluctantly.
Mark Cloud, Water and Sewer Superintendent, and we are testing quarterly for PFAS. We have the results from the first quarter this year, and we should be getting the second quarter results shortly.
And what are they showing?
They're maintaining the same levels.
Same, they're not
Same levels,
increasing.
so
Yeah,
nothing alarming.
Drastic.
Okay,
That's good to hear.
good.
Thank you.
So Mark was referring to the public water supply wells, and I'm referring to the monitoring wells adjacent to the landfill, so, yeah.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Sean, and hope your wife gets better soon.
No.
Melissa,
No, thank you.
hold on one
Good
second.
to see
I'm
Oh.
sorry. Just to follow up on the Phase 2, and Melissa Rosenblatt, West Street, Duxbury. Is there an opportunity to add PFAS sampling to the Phase 2 in any way? Is that a conversation we could have with solid waste? Or,
So the Phase 2 comprehensive site assessment for the McNeil landfill will have PFAS sampling.
okay.
Yes, but for
Okay.
the Duxbury Municipal landfill, which is ongoing monitoring,
Yeah.
that hasn't been added yet.
Oh,
But the DEP regulations are changing,
okay.
and from what I'm hearing, they will be adding PFAS to all landfills in their monitoring programs going forward. But
So that
when
would be
that,
our annual
that will
sampling.
eventually happen, it just hasn't happened yet,
Okay.
yeah, so,
So that might be, sorry.
yeah.
So if that takes another 2 years or so, is it possible, right now, we don't have any, we're not collecting monitoring data at the municipal landfill for PFAS. And we wouldn't be until that's regulated. Could we do that on our own to keep up that monitoring and get that data around the landfill, or is that problematic?
I wouldn't say it's problematic. It's a funding issue.
Okay.
I don't think it's in the budget currently. And I'm not sure how
Penny-wise.
much information that's really going to give us at this
I
point,
think
because we know
that's-
the PFAS is there.
That's the key point, Sean. What additional information does it tell us? We know there's PFAS already
Right.
there.
Yes, yeah.
We know we have to do something about it. Additional monitoring to do what? To see if it's increasing or to decreasing, or
Right.
what's it for?
Yeah.
What would it be for?
Well, if the DEP adds it to the monitoring program, it will be to monitor the levels.
Right.
And it might be on a biannual basis, that type of thing.
Would it help with the fingerprinting?
Yeah, fingerprinting, yeah, it could help, yeah, absolutely. But you're right, I mean, we know it's there, we know that there isn't a substantial risk because there's no one drinking the water in and around the landfill with the public water supply well shut down. And they
Would
will-
it-
so, yeah.
Would it help with the modeling at all? I realize.
Question was, does it help with the modeling?
Yeah, it will help with the modeling, and I think, Kevin, we actually recommended some additional sampling of the monitoring wells adjacent to the landfill in our recommendations in this final report. But those are further out recommendations. Is that correct, Kevin? I think some of our yellow wells on the recommendations were the landfill wells, yes. Yep.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you.
All right. The next item on the agenda, we have.
This is the exciting bit.
I thought that was a boo.
No, this is it.
Sustainable Budget Task Force update presented by Mary McKinnon, our Finance Director.
Everybody's running away. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
If you're a
Thank you, Board
resident, you
Advisory
might want to
Board.
stick around.
Oh,
Ooh, I guess that shelf is not really a shelf.
Don't rely on it.
Okay, not bad.
Is that one of the Stanley mugs that caused that or what?
Not exactly, but. All right. Good evening, everybody. Mary McKinnon, Finance Director. Thank you for having me. I'm here this evening to provide our first update to the Select Board from the work of the Sustainable Budget Task Force. There we go. As you know, the town manager introduced the Sustainable Budget Task Force to the Select Board on April 22nd of this year, approximately 6 weeks after the conclusion of town meeting. The charge of this group is to develop a sustainable 5-year financial projection along with a plan on how to achieve those results. At the end of our work, we intend to provide a report of findings and recommendations to this board so that you may develop a budget message for our departments for the FY26 budget cycle. When we talk about a sustainable budget, the principles that we keep at top of mind are to build a forecast that funds core services for our community, to build a forecast that is based on regularly occurring revenue sources, not one-time revenue sources, and that we include realistic assumptions in our recommendations. There may be ideas that we debate and propose in our recommendations, but they may not happen during the time period under review, so we need to be realistic about the impact of those assumptions on our recommendations. If we remember back to less than a year ago when we were beginning to build the FY25 budget, during that time it became clear that the town would be challenged to build a balanced FY25 budget, but we did it. However, as we looked to the outer years in our forecasting model at that time, the forecasting model predicted structural deficits beyond FY25. This chart here is an excerpt from the model that we analyzed back in August of 23 when we were building that FY25 budget. And you can see that in the outer years, there is a projected structural deficit based on our existing forecasting models that we have in place. And at the end of the forecasting model, what you can see is that the growth in expenditures is outpacing the growth in our revenues at this time. As a result, we knew that we needed to take a deeper dive into what options we can identify in order to build a sustainable budget that provides the level of service that our residents and our businesses can rely upon. And hence, the reason that we've created what I'll call the SBTF, which is much faster to say. Thank you, Nancy. The group began meeting in early May and quickly agreed that we need to base our discussions, our decisions, and our recommendations on data whenever possible. We have been looking at historic trends, analyzing what other communities are doing, and using the collective wisdom of other agencies who have conducted studies where needed. We need to align our budgetary decisions with the services that the community expects. We need to work with our departments to ensure that our resources are allocated effectively, and we need to communicate these results with the public on an ongoing basis, as we are doing here this evening. And to start our process, we agreed to focus on the revenue side of the budget first. Just to remind you, in terms of our revenue sources that are available to the town of Duxbury to fund our budget, we have the tax levy, we have state aid, a series of local receipts, and those comprise 92% of our funding sources. The town of Duxbury is heavily reliant on the tax levy as the primary revenue source to fund our budget. Local receipts are the only other items, accounting for 12% of our funding sources, that we can control here at the local level. So we started by focusing on our revenue sources. What has happened to date? So far, you can see here that we have held 3 meetings during the month of May, and we started with a close look at our tax levy and the various property classifications that we have here in town. In doing so, we've reviewed the mechanics of Proposition 2.5, the difference between a single and split tax rate, what is new growth and how it affects the levy, as well as state aid and local receipts. We then took a deeper dive into each one of these categories of funding sources, and we invited several of our department heads to come in and present data and answer questions and brainstorm ideas with us. So as you can see, we met with the assessor, the interim planner, as well as our building commissioner to really take a deeper dive into our tax levy and our property portfolio to identify any areas of opportunity where we may be able to expand our taxable base. That could include items that could contribute to new growth. It included conversations regarding additional developments such as accessory dwelling units, as well as taking a look at our exempt parcels, our exempt portfolio, and seeing if there was any opportunity to convert some exempt land into taxable land. And so we've explored a number of avenues with respect to the tax levy. We also then started to move into local receipts, and we invited a couple of other department heads to join us. As you can see here, we had a conversation with our fire chief with respect to ambulance receipts and with our cemetery superintendent with respect to cemetery receipts. Those are 2 of the top 5 local receipts that contribute to the funding sources of our budget. In addition to that, we are also talking about other revenue opportunities or potential, I think we heard that word a lot tonight, potential revenue opportunities with respect to EV charging stations, short-term rentals. There is proposed legislation at the State House right now with respect to meals excise and allowing local communities to increase the rate that is charged for meals excise here in the community. So there are a number of items that we have evaluated with respect to revenues at this time. Next steps. So where we are today and what our next steps include is to complete our revenue discussion before we move into our expenditure analysis. We still have a couple of other large local receipts with respect to the transfer station as well as pool and recreation and beach permits that we've talked about extensively over the course of the last 10 months. So we will be wrapping up our revenue analysis in the next 1 to 2 meetings, and then we will be moving forward into our expenditure analysis. Tonight, what I wanted to do is just provide a very high-level update to you without looking at any numbers associated with the revenues that we've talked about, and with the hopes that for our next update before the Select Board, that we would be able to pull together that data and carve out enough time on your agenda for July 8th, where we can start to talk about some of the modeling that we've put together on some of these revenue items that we've discussed. So that is what the SBTF has been up to for the last month. And I'm joined here this evening by 2 of our board members, Fernando Guitart and Betsy Sullivan. So if you have any questions for us, I think any one of the 3 of us would be happy to answer them.
Start with, we'll go left to right. Does anybody on the board have any questions?
Sorry. When the, on that first slide having to do with background, when you're looking at the excess levy, and we're going into negative numbers, you said is that existing only if we kept our budget as it is now without adding any new services or staff or?
So the answer is perhaps. Remember that this chart here is a chart that was based on an analysis or a budget development that was done 10 months ago. So So there have been some things that have changed over the course of the past 10 months. So do these numbers exactly represent where we are today? The answer would be no, which is why every year we go through a budget development process and incorporate all of the additional factors or changes from year to year. However, what it does show us is that looking at outer years, FY26 and beyond, the town is facing a structural deficit. The extent of that is part of the work that this task force is doing right now in order to develop a 5-year forecast.
So that's without adding any staff or?
Correct. Correct.
Brian, do you have any questions?
No questions, just a comment. Thank you very much for participating in this, and Fernando and Betsy. This is the journey of 1,000 miles against the first couple of steps here. So this is an important project and process. I'm very encouraged by what we've heard tonight in terms of how we're going to move forward, what the framework will look like or looks like. And I'm cautiously optimistic we're going to be able to work through this together and minimize any potential adverse effects on our taxpayers for the next few years. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, I don't have any big questions. I wish I had, some fantastic ways that the town can, come up with all this revenue. I think the revenue side is so restricted and limited, and where the challenge is going to be is on the other side and trying to figure out where to save, because clearly, we're headed in a direction that is worrisome to a lot of residents. And I appreciate the fact that we're going through this analysis with the goal of trying to figure out how to avoid the override and help some of our residents to be able to stay in town, because I do think it is a struggle for a lot of people. So, thank you, and we look forward to keeping on.
Okay, I would just, if I may, just to clarify, so the charge of the committee is for us to develop a 5-year sustainable forecast, and that is based on the premise of trying to retain as many core services that we provide today to our residents and our businesses, and what it would take for us to achieve that versus recommend, and that may include some changes to our tax levy. So we will be presenting to you a couple of different options or consequences of our recommendations. So I just want to be clear on that. Okay?
That's going to be the difficult conversation.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Is the consequences.
Correct.
I know you get some inside knowledge. Fernando, do you have anything you want to say tonight?
Nope. Not tonight.
Fantastic.
You shook them off. All right. I too will save my questions for another night. So, as far as what these folks are presenting to your committee, will the July 8th meeting have some more meat to it as far as what those numbers would look like, what those ideas would actually provide, or is those we just
So
throwing
based on our
ideas?
conversations, not on the expenditure side at all, so we're still focusing on revenues.
Correct.
And so,
That's what I meant.
based on our conversations with the department heads that we've already met with, and with the conversations that we've had amongst the group, and you've got to remember with the folks that we have on this group that we're fortunate to have, there's a very extensive collective wisdom, not only of finance, but also of the town of Duxbury's operations. So we've got a lot of folks who are discussing this and providing recommendations and ideas. We are going to start to begin building the revenue model, and we will be filling in the pieces for the items that we have already discussed, but there will still be some gaps that we are going to be working on over the next couple of weeks.
Thank you.
Sure.
Do any members of the public have any questions? There being none, thank you very much. Appreciate your time tonight. All right, the next item on the agenda is Mary. Discussion regarding end-of-year transfers. Ah. Select board's not on here. I'm just kidding. Here we go.
Set.
All right.
All right, so what you have here in front of you is a set, the first set of fiscal year-end transfers. So Mass General Law, Chapter 44, Section 33B allows municipalities during the last 2.5 months of the fiscal year, so from May 1st through July 15th, allows municipalities to transfer available appropriations from one line item or one department to another in order to move surpluses to cover deficits that have occurred. This is normal operating procedure for excuse me, for municipalities, and not unheard of in communities that have large budgets where things happen during the year that are either unplanned or that we've been able to take advantage of some efficiencies. So what you'll see in this chart is that there is a sum total of $291,363 that I am asking you to approve transferring from the first set of line items listed at the top over to the line items listed at the bottom. So if I may just sort of in a broad brushstroke talk a little bit about where we are seeing the surpluses. The largest surplus right now is with respect to the fuel depot. Gasoline usage was under budget because we had a fairly or a very mild winter. We were not running as many trucks. We had a couple of windstorms, but in terms of winter activity and snow removal, it was very light, as well as gas prices held steady. And when the budget was originally produced about 2 years ago for the FY24 budget, there was still some volatility in gas prices. So we're seeing a healthy surplus there. Next one, as you know, we've had some vacancies in some of our key positions, and therefore we've had some significant salary surpluses that we are utilizing here. And then we are also seeing a surplus in our street lighting account, and I can say that the conversion to the LED street lights appears to be paying off for us, which is a great thing.
That was a big step. We took over the street lights from Verizon, right? They became town-owned, and we changed to LED, right?
Yeah, they walked away from it.
Well, they walked away from it. Okay, right. But still, it was a good walk away because we were able to save some money then. Okay, cool.
So with all of those positive things being said, we've seen some challenges with respect to our FY24 budget when it comes to natural gas. There was a significant spike in the price of natural gas, and we are seeing it across a number of our departments that are heavy consumers of gas, central buildings, which encompasses a number of properties here in town. The cemetery, we have talked about it for the last several months that has been an issue. Uh-oh.
No.
Okay. So in order to cover deficits within natural gas, we are looking to use those surpluses. The other large contributor is overtime at the police department. So I met with some folks at the police department, and there were a couple of items that were not necessarily included in the FY24 budget when it was prepared, again, about 2 years ago. Post-reform, you guys have had a number of conversations with respect to post-reform. It requires a number of mandated training sessions for all of our sworn officers a couple of times a year, and at the time, post was not finalized when that budget was prepared. So there was not an inclusion of the funding needed for that overtime, the training for which the officers attend on overtime. So that was one of the issues. The second issue is that we've also had some vacancies in our staff, and when we have vacancies, we need to cover those shifts with overtime. We've had a couple of folks who have been out on long-term military leave and other things, so there's been an abundance of overtime needed to cover those shifts, as well as the increase in call volume. So the increase in call volume has resulted in shifts being filled with overtime, and so where it says CBA regular, it's actually a typo. So what happened is when we sat down and looked at the projection of the deficit and compared it to what we had actually included in the FY24 budget, the base salary line is sufficient to cover the projection, but the overtime line is not.
That's what CBA stands for then?
Collective bargaining agreement.
Okay, got it.
Okay?
This is,
So-
this is a huge amount of money.
Yep.
It is. It is certainly an anomaly for the police department.
Oh,
For this
so
year.
this is a one-off, that we're not going to be, I mean,
So I can't predict the vacancies and the shifts that need to be covered in the future. However, the amount that is listed here for that post-training, that has been included in the FY '25 budget.
Mary, the new hires too,
Mhm.
getting off
Eh,
the schooling, they can do that.
Exactly, coming out of the academy. So there are a number of officers who are completing the academy and doing their initial training, and they will be able to ride solo, if you will, within the next couple of months.
yeah, this is worrisome. It's a lot of, it's a big overage, if you will.
Okay. And then a couple of other smaller items, as you can see listed here. Any other questions? Nope.
I have one.
Go right ahead.
So natural gas obviously is driving a third of this. It's over $100,000.
Right.
What are we doing for, how do we purchase our natural gas currently?
Through a broker named Scott Werman. He's come in here before and spoken to you when we were doing municipal aggregation.
So is it under contract?
Yes.
Okay. So that contract, I presume, had some sort of escalator or had a provision in it that allowed the price to,
We lock in a
Jump
price.
up?
We lock in a fixed price, but these rates, not sure of the dates, but they might have gone up
Mid-year.
prior to locking in.
Yeah.
So
tell me that again?
the prices may have gone up prior to locking in our rate.
Prices may have gone up.
Yeah, because gas, as you know, is a commodity, so
No,
it's,
I get that, but usually you can purchase it under contract for
Yeah, you're locked
a
in.
specific period of time
And
at
we
a
did.
specific price.
and I think it was a 2-year contract. I'd have to look back and see what the date was on the contract that we signed.
Something like this, this jumps out for obvious reasons. But particularly where it is a commodity and it generally trades on the, well, without getting into the details, but there's ways to control this. And I want to make sure that we're doing that here. I'm sure you're doing what you can, but maybe we need to pop the hood and look around a little bit. Maybe there's another way to go about it. If maybe the departments aren't buying it all under one contract, maybe we should think about that, or if, I'm just curious, maybe we need another discussion on nat gas.
I think that's a good idea, Brian. I'd like to have another discussion how we go about doing this, right?
Sure.
Yep, that'd be great.
CHIPS contribution there too, a lot of that, the crematorium is a big contributor.
If the crematory is busy,
it's
gas is going to go up.
The revenue generated.
Right, well, because we just increased the
Exactly.
fees.
No, I'm
For
just
that.
saying, the cost of gas.
You have to go to the
Yeah,
microphone,
that's
Betsy.
indicator.
How much gas we purchased,
Mhm.
which was offset by the fees charged by the crematorium.
Just for the record.
It wasn't keeping the temps at 68. We were using the gas for the crematorium.
Yeah, no, I get that.
We get that.
Yeah.
We do, but that's also a revenue generating. We have raised the fees, but if those need to be raised again, I mean, this is again a big hit.
It's part of our conversation.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Okay, great.
But still, I think we do need to, like you're saying, Brian, we wouldn't mind another look at this, of how we go about managing our gas prices.
All right. Well, thank you.
Sure.
I don't think this requires a vote. I don't see any vote on here.
It does require a vote. The
Does?
law, yeah, the law requires approval of the Finance Committee as well as the Select
And the
Board.
Finance Committee voted,
That on May 21st. They
In
voted
favor.
unanimously in favor.
thank you.
I don't have anything here.
What would you like
Right.
us to?
A motion to approve the transfers as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Excellent, thank you. So I need your signature. Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Thank you. All right. Discussion regarding a poll petition request by Verizon and Eversource on Lincoln Street.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
Just stick around.
Thank you, Betsy.
We received a petition presented by Verizon New England Incorporated and Instar Electric doing business as Eversource Energy. The petitioner is requesting permission to relocate one jointly owned midspan pole, number 9311/369, on the easterly side of Lincoln Street. The new location will be approximately 20 feet south of the pole's existing location and approximately 275 feet north of the center line of Mayflower Street. This installation is being requested to ensure the new subdivision has adequate clearance and space for safe ingress and egress. An administrative hearing was held on at 9 o'clock on Wednesday the 29th in my office, for which notifications were sent to the abutters by certified mail. In addition, the legal notice was published in the Duxbury Clipper on May 15th, and you'll see that there's a memo attached to the board, the corresponding documentation, and we're recommending approval with the conditions as stated therein.
Thank you. I will note that no other interested persons appeared at the hearing to give cause for denial of the request as part of your recommendation. With that, are there any questions from the board or from the audience?
Pretty straightforward.
With that, I'll take a motion.
I move that the Select Board authorize the petition order to relocate one JO midspan pole 9311/369 on the easterly side of Lincoln Street. The new location will be approximately 20 feet south of the pole's existing location and approximately 275 feet north of the center line of Mayflower Street, which installation is being requested to ensure new subdivision has adequate clearance and space for safe ingress and egress as presented, along with conditions presented by DPW Director Sheila Scarzi and that Verizon New England Inc. and/or Instar Electric DBA Eversource Energy contact the Duxbury Department of Public Works at least 48 hours prior to the commencement of the project.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. The next item is a discussion, approval, and adoption of a outdoor dining policy and application.
If I may, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Brief background. On April 30th, 2024, Governor Healy signed into law provisions allowing the Select Board as a local licensing authority to approve outdoor dining requests for those establishments with existing liquor licenses. After consultation with Town Council, they recommended that a policy and application process be in place. The attached policy and application have been collaboratively drafted with Town Council and reviewed by our Municipal Services Director, Jim Wazalewski, and our health agents, Tracy Mayo and Lauren Heshe. You have a motion for your consideration.
All right. I have a couple of comments, but my protocol, I'll allow my fellow board members to ask any questions first. And I'll start with Fernando.
Yes, so my understanding, the reason why this is in front of us as the Select Board was the Chestnut Street Grill. No?
No.
Why is this before us?
You are the local licensing authority, and prior to during COVID, certain requirements were put in place. The rules were elasticized, if you will, to allow people to do things that they might not otherwise be able to do. And the governor retracted all of those COVID-era provisions so that everybody had to revert back to where they were prior to the pandemic. As a result, a new set of regulations needed to be adopted, and that's what these are.
Okay. The concern I have with this, right, is that I know that with the new tavern, the Bluefish Tavern, there was a request by the proprietor there to be able to have outdoor dining and bands and all sorts of stuff going on outdoor. And at the end, there was pretty contentious, right? And so does this policy mean that any restaurateur or any owner can go ahead and by right go and put stuff out there, or does it have to go before the ZBA, or how's this going to work?
Well, the Bluefish River Tavern already went through its series of approvals at the ZBA, and that's where it was denied. So they were not allowed to do it.
Right, but if we enact this policy, if we approve it, does that give them the right to do this?
Only if they have existing permanent permits.
And
Have designated outdoor areas prior to the adoption of the policy. That's the first provision in the entire thing.
And doesn't it come before the select board?
Yes.
And we vote it in?
Yes, because
So
you're the local licensing
We're the
authority.
local
So
license.
we'll always have the opportunity to.
Yeah, there'll be a process, and the abutters get notified.
And this is that process. The procedures and rules are all spelled out here.
Okay, I just want
No, I
to
hear you.
check that we
Yep.
don't approve this, and next thing you know, there's,
You're the last
By
stop.
right.
You're the last
Okay.
stop. They have to go through the Board of Appeals / Planning Board or whatever other
they
approvals.
have to go to the ZBA first.
If, in
Well,
fact, that's what the
you need
zoning
a zoning
requirements.
permit.
If, in fact, that's what the zoning bylaw says. This is the last stop. The first stop would either be the Board of Appeals, Planning Board, Building Department, any of those. But this is the last stop before that.
I think our building commissioner is urgently wanting to say something.
There you go.
I
That's
think
why
we
he's
should
here.
clean up some of this, yeah.
Yeah.
I'm happy to say something here. I'll keep it short and simple. I reviewed this a lot with a lot of concern because I didn't want to lose any control. And I think part of the charge, what I got out of this was that by Governor Healy's act, the idea was that it would streamline a process, which is this process before you. But the streamlining was that once a decision was made, they didn't have to wait for a 90-day decision period and an appeal period to happen. Once the decision was done and all the reviews were completed that we incorporated into the process, then they wouldn't have to wait for that long period. That's kind of the short version I get out of this. With that in mind, we kept in places in part of the processes for site plan review with the planning board. It falls under their purview. It would fall under the ZBA insofar as if the special permit that existed limited the occupant load for some reason, which was the case with the Bluefish River Tavern. So we drove a lot of this stuff in there to still have those controls in place.
Okay. So you feel comfortable that there's the opportunity for an owner to go through the process to have dining, and there is ability for the various abutters and neighbors to comment and review, right? So that's all built into it.
Yeah, if there was an increase in visitors or occupants to the building, it requires a site plan review, which would be a special permit process or a site plan review process that would be a public meeting that they could come and chime in about. Okay. It may not necessarily involve the ZBA, depending on occupant load increases and factors like that.
Okay.
But
But it will
it
have
could be
to
a
come-
multi-prong approach, or it could be a single approach where site plan review would come into play because the increased number of visitors to the property would result in parking problems.
Right.
It also involves, like, the Board of Health comes into play with septic design.
Okay.
It still has all the controls in there.
Okay. All right, and then ultimately has to come to the select board, so. And then that's an
Correct.
open meeting. Okay.
So in my work capacity, I'm actually working with two businesses, one in Barnstable County and one in Plymouth County, doing transfers of ownerships of restaurants and reapplying for their liquor licenses and outside dining as a part of these applications with both in Barnstable as well as Plymouth. And so I have learned through these two applicants that it is a whole process. This does not seem any more onerous than either of those towns. But what the difference is with what I'm seeing is that it's a different animal when you are reapplying. When you were grandfathered in under COVID, and you're reapplying, even if the business is transferring ownership, because they had outside dining, and because the governor has extended that whatever she did, it's a less onerous process. You don't have to maybe jump through all the hoops that you would have to if it was a new outside dining. And I think that makes sense. I mean, I think some of the businesses in town that have that were granted the outside dining.
Just one.
And now that's been allowed to extend. It hasn't been a problem, and it doesn't,
Respectfully, that's exactly the opposite of what the governor has done and what council has advised.
all right, so.
Everything will revert back to where it was prior to COVID.
I thought the governor extended
No,
the.
she withdrew it.
Oh.
As it says, on the
So-
30th, Governor Healy signed into law provisions allowing the select board to do this, and the reason for that was because actually it's right here in the packet. She signed into law an act making appropriations for the fiscal year 20 to provide supplementing certain existing appropriations and for certain other activities and projects, reverting back everything that was granted under COVID. Everything goes back to the way it was before.
With all due respect, I've read this multiple times, and I respect our counsel on this, but there were parts of COVID that worked. This was one of them, outdoor seating. People liked it, masks or not. This was, and I can read this, notwithstanding the provisions of this chapter, any special permit, variance, or other approval issued thereunder, or any general or special law to the contrary, a town may approve a request for expansion of outdoor table service or an extension of an earlier granted approval. Before such approval, the select board, in our case, as established by the charter, shall establish the process for approving such requests, and such process shall not be required to comply with the notice and publication provisions of Section 11.
That's what I thought.
It is less onerous
Mm-hmm.
in that respect, and it is to benefit our communities and our small businesses. This impacts one business that had outdoor seating during the pandemic that didn't have permitted outdoor seating. A lot of our businesses have that. This is one that has had zero problems, provides outdoor seating, not on a public way or anything like that. When I read this, and I don't want to speak for Governor Healy, but the two items that were added to the fiscal budget were to-go drinking, alcohol, and outdoor seating. The public liked those two ideas. She extended that. She made it permanent by adding this as a statute that was passed by the legislature. So I just, that's how I see it. People are fine to disagree with me. But I will say this, our council did a great job preparing this. The only part of this policy that I would suggest striking, because it specifically allows us to do it in the statute, is striking the notice and publication. This impacts one business that's been without their outdoor seating for a couple of months now. And to delay it any further for something that is specifically taken out of this by statute, I don't think that it's necessary for publication and notice. Our agendas are publicly noticed, and when this application comes up, everybody can know about it.
The beauty of this is you've got council coming in here next week, so it's probably best to just postpone it and talk with them about it, because, again, I don't have a dog in this fight. I'm just advising you that this is what council has prescribed, and they prescribed it to all the communities that they represent.
I'm just cleaning it up. I agree with the policy. I looked it over. I looked at other towns' policies. I think the policy is in line. I don't, other than that piece, which is black letter, it says before, it says in here, such process shall not be required to comply with the notice and publication provisions of Section 11. Section 11 is that publication notice provisions.
Yeah.
I don't know that, so it's the only checkbox on our application that I would suggest striking.
I can't defend or defeat this, so.
It's just a policy.
Maybe, but I look at it a little deeper than that myself. I would suggest that if you have a question with it, you bring it up with council next week.
I do think that the policy makes sense for new businesses or businesses that want to initiate outside seating. I do think it's important for the neighbors, the
Yes,
abutters, the
100%.
whole, there needs to be a
Yes.
complete process. So I don't have any problem with that. I think
But for existing, I don't, yeah.
for the one, I agree. I mean, there really hasn't been a problem that I'm aware of. It seems almost punitive to not.
I don't disagree. I love the place. I'm a regular, here, not a regular, but I go there and I love it. I think it's awesome.
The thing that what I'm concerned about is, I understand that, right, and I support that, is the unintended consequences of making this policy, and then another business comes in and says, this way I don't understand because I'm not legally,
No, I understand.
all right, goes in there and says, hell, well, you've got I was existing or exempt, whatever, right, whatever the argument is, and then basically goes and does it without an opportunity to go through the open meeting and for neighbors and abutters to voice their concern, and at the end of the day, basically either modify it, change it, be more in keeping with the neighborhood. I don't know. Right now, the unintended consequences.
And I think your point, and I agree with Amy too. I think if the hypothetical 5 to 10 years from now, somebody else would fall into
Right.
this, I'm okay with the notice and provision. What I'm saying is, and this talks about this, for existing users. So we have an existing outdoor seating, people that had an existing outdoor seating.
There's only one in town that has it,
Right.
existing.
Is that absolutely, are we sure?
Are we sure?
Yes,
Island Creek Oysters.
they have a permitted outdoor
Sun
seating.
Tavern,
Permitted outdoor.
Sun Tavern.
yeah, Sun Tavern,
All permitted, right?
the Oysterman.
Yeah, they're all permitted. They're not, they didn't have the temporary outdoor seating during COVID. There's only one of those, and that's all that this applies to. So,
So what are we
That's
doing here?
I'd like to pass a policy, but I would like to, for current people that had existing temporary outdoor seating, I would like to exempt the notice and publication provisions of Section 11 as stated in Section 4 of Chapter 40A.
So would you have an objection to waiting? Are we meeting next week or in 2 weeks?
Well, my point of, I guess that my point of objecting to that part,
Yes.
and was because it's caused considerable delay to this business.
Just another week.
And every week is another week that they have to prepare their application. Another week that it could be potentially put in a newspaper and provide. The reason they exempted this is to stop that delay or allow towns to exempt it. So that, because this was a gap in time.
Yeah, no,
that
I
the
understand.
Yeah.
But-
Why did the, sorry, I've interrupted you.
No, if council put this together.
Yes.
Then, and we're meeting with him next week, then I understand what you're
Yeah.
saying, but it's just a week.
What I would suggest maybe is we pass the policy. And so that the last piece of, the only part that this is in is a checkbox at the end of the policy that we've done notice and publication. And that if, and at least allow this business to apply. Pass this policy, let this application go public so that they can begin preparing it. And I'm happy to take up the abutter notice part at the next meeting. There's plenty of notice. I mean, we're all here,
I won't be here next week,
but I'm just,
Are we meeting next week?
I don't want to hold this up
there's
anymore.
an executive session next week.
Oh, all right.
Does any other board member, I just hijacked a lot of minutes there. Does any other board members have any comments on the policy other than what I've
No.
brought up?
I do. I think it's imperative to have public notice and comment. I also have a question, I guess, and this is maybe something for council. In section A16, it reads that the LLA, us, may deny the application, blah, 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 which implies to me that we have an obligation to grant it unless. So I'm a little troubled by that. I would much prefer that this board, as the LLA, have the opportunity to deny, because just as important to have the public input, there may be something that's not included in here that's important to us if it comes up. A neighbor might say, I don't know, there's something specific to my home, and this is going to be a unique influence or adverse influence. I just don't want to be caught with a regulation that we passed ourselves, and now we're binding ourselves to grant a license that perhaps we otherwise might not want to. And I don't know the business that you're talking about specifically, so I'm not singling anyone out. But if this is going to be a policy, that's my concern, that if we pass it, it's going to apply to everybody equally.
Right.
And
What's the 16?
here, it's right here.
So
It's
how are you
A16.
reading this?
The LLA may deny any application.
Or
In other words,
suspend or
I'm
revoke.
looking through it to see what the criteria are for us to grant or deny. It just says there's a whole bunch of things that the applicant needs to present. Okay, that's great, but what are we supposed to focus our review on? So is this saying that as long as they present all these materials to us, we need to approve the application?
Now, the end of that
No.
sentence says, or if the use of the outdoor seating areas propose a threat to public health, safety,
Yeah.
or welfare, or if the seating plan is likely to cause unreasonable impacts to the neighborhood.
Right.
It's pretty
So-
broad.
So is that our subjective interpretation to say this is unreasonable?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's
All
what
right.
this looks like to me.
All right,
Yeah,
all right.
it's pretty
all right.
broad.
And that comes about by the abutter notice and
So it
people
must be- there
coming
must
out
be a
and
notice.
having a problem with it. But again, both Barnstable and Plymouth are doing things differently when it's a new application versus someone that's been doing the outdoor seating since COVID.
I believe,
Go ahead. Of course, Nancy.
yes, please, you
Yes.
have to. Sorry.
I worked with town council on assembling this and getting the application and the policies together, and it's based on the ABCCs, what they had for the alteration of premises. And so abutter notices were always included. So that's why probably he recommended that they also be included, but that's where it came from.
Okay. No, I get it. Any members of the public?
Hi, my name is Dave Udy. I live on King Caesar Road. I'm actually working with Emily Partine with the Chestnut Street Grill a bit on this. And I just wanted to give you my 2 cents of what I think this means, my kind of objective view of what this means. It basically reads to me as that the governor and the legislature, when they passed it, want a more streamlined process for a very small subset of businesses that had the existing grant during COVID, and that what they were looking for towns to do is adopt some policy that's more streamlined. And so what my understanding of what's been done here is that town council has come up with this policy, and this policy still takes into account Board of Health, it takes into account zoning, it takes into account all the health and safety issues that would go into it, and ultimately comes back before the decision maker, but it's just not something that drags on for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. As you know, and we've all been through it, right? We've all been at various meetings, and there's no quorum, and it has to get continued, or someone wants more time to hire an engineer to evaluate it, and things get delayed. And meanwhile, good businesses in the town suffer. So we want businesses in the town. We want businesses that are good actors. We like if a particular business was a bad actor or doing something untoward, I get it. There should be great scrutiny on any kind of application. But I think the purpose of this was to create a policy that is more streamlined, and it put it to the towns to do that. And I would suggest that the notice language in there, again, defer to your own town council, but it says shall not be required. It doesn't say it's optional to be required. It literally says the word shall not be required to comply with the notice requirements. So it seems to me if it says shall, then it shouldn't do it. But obviously, you have skilled town council. So I think, this is a good business in town. It's a popular feature of this business. The only reason they fall into this area is because they were ones during COVID that got the exemption. So this is meant to help those businesses have a more streamlined ability to apply to the town, have all the same health safeguards go into it, but have a process that goes faster so they don't lose their summer business, right? Because that's when they have outdoor seating. And summer is upon us. And I know this particular business, heavily relies upon this outdoor seating to run their business effectively. And we don't want good businesses to go to work. So I'd ask that you really consider approving this policy, at your earliest convenience, and think long and hard about the notice requirement, because I think the statute literally says shall not be required to comply. Thank you.
Did this restaurant have a prior approval by the LLA and ABVCC to have designated outdoor prime? Do we approve this?
We're the LLI.
I know, did we approve this?
I don't know how we did it back then. I think it was
Did we approve it?
Yeah, I think,
Yes, there was an application process.
Yeah.
And certain things were waived because it was temporary in nature.
so just for the public that's watching, sorry, what did you say again? They can't hear you on the, what did you said it was a temporary?
Repeat what you say.
Yes, there was an application process.
Yeah.
But some of the standard requirements were waived because at the time there was no indoor dining. They wanted to make people have outdoor dining.
So for those listening home, there was an application process and certain things were waived on it during COVID.
In council's opinion to this, to all of their clients, they actually specifically state that we recommend that notice to abutters still required for the ABCC's alteration of premises application procedure for indoor alterations be included in the new approval process. So council is recommending that they keep that. Again, they'll be here next week if you'd like to engage directly.
Will that, does that slow things down?
Yeah, and look.
Other factors may slow this application down, the specific one to which you're referring, the least of which is this.
Well, I think number one is I'd like to give the applicant an opportunity to begin preparing their application. I'm okay with the policy. The language is pretty clear that we don't have to, we are not to be required to comply with the notice and publication. It doesn't say we can't, and that we cannot. I know that it's terribly worded because it's shall and not be in the same sentence, but ultimately, it allows us some discretion. I just think that where it's specifically stated in there that we can exclude it, we should. But if I'm overruled by my fellow board members, I don't think next week's going to change anything.
I'm getting really confused now.
We're not forbidden
Okay.
from giving notice to abutters. I just don't think where the statute said we can exclude it, we should be putting it in there. But if council's telling us they think it's better.
Right, so okay, now what you're saying, your interpretation of state law says we don't need to include it, but our local policy does include it.
Correct.
Okay. It'd be interesting to understand why town council said we should have it.
Probably for the same reasons maybe my board members think that it's imperative.
Due process.
Due process, yeah.
Constitution.
I think, I feel for the delay. I think this is unfortunate, but where we have town council already weighing in and guiding, it is difficult to ignore that and not give town council an opportunity. I won't be here next week. I'm sure you guys will, hear them out and make the right decision, but I think we're hard pressed to ignore council's opinion here.
And I guess for the sake of expediency, I'd entertain a motion tonight. I would even entertain, if town council changes their mind in the interim, it's not going to affect the application process.
And if I may, through the
Go
chair, my client's fine with you approving the policy as is tonight. And if something changes, great, but that would allow her to start getting the application going pursuant to the exact language that your town council recommended. That would be helpful.
I would do that.
All right, let's.
Yeah, let's approve it and then change it if we have to.
I move that the Select Board approve of and adopt the Town of Duxbury Select Board policy, procedures, and rules for use of outdoor space for food and alcohol service as presented. Well, it wasn't amended, right? So as presented, effective immediately.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Right. Move things forward.
Yes. I appreciate that. Thank you for your input. All right, now we move on to the MBTA Communities Working Group. We have a vote to select one Select Board member to serve on the MBTA Communities Working Group. I don't know if anybody would like to be. I'd maybe entertain self-nominations or other nominations if you'd like to be on it. And
not me.
There's a debate on it.
Was it?
Paul Halkiotis is here too, if you have any questions.
Well, I guess this is pretty self-explanatory. We asked for a Select Board member to be on the MBTA Communities Working Group about 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So now we're just appointing that person. Would anybody like to be on it?
No.
I would, but unfortunately I'm on the Sustainable Task Force, and we're meeting all the way through August, right? So
you're a solid volunteer.
I'm volunteering, and I think it would be unfair to the MBTA group. Come on, this is yours, Amy. This is yours.
Listen, I love
This is all
zoning.
yours.
I do, but I don't know when. Guys, I don't have any room on this plate. I don't know when this group is meeting. I work full time.
Paul, do we have to have a board member on?
Good evening. No, you don't, but there are going to be some policy decisions, and this was a recommendation of Chris Ryan before he left to have a well-rounded committee that could make some policy recommendations that would hopefully be followed by the voters. So it's your call on how you want to handle it.
When is this committee proposing to meet, and how often?
I would recommend that due to the deadline, that this group meet a couple times a month at a minimum. Might need to meet more frequently just to get started. We haven't met, and we don't have members, so we haven't really had a discussion about what day of the week. But I guess the short answer, I'd recommend twice a month, every other week.
Oh, God, you guys.
I can't do it. I'm doing the coastal resiliency twice a month already.
So Amy, it is.
All right then. Hey, rock, paper, scissors?
The only time I would even be available is a Friday morning, which the rest of the committee will hate.
Well, he said it's not, I mean, we don't have to do this. We could.
Well, hopefully we'll be adding value of some kind, right? So.
Right, that's true, that's true.
Nobody else can do it?
A meeting every Tuesday.
Yeah. If you can't, I will, but I would rather, because I want to be on the next one.
Well, you want to be on the next one? What's the next one?
To be on the board or the committee to appoint people to the communities working group. The next one, H.
Well, you can be on both, Brian.
Yeah, we'll let you.
We'll let you. I really feel like I am spread so thin right now that I just fear that I may miss more than, than I otherwise would.
Yeah.
All right, I'll do it.
Oh,
Yay, Brian.
Yay, Brian. I move to appoint Brian Glenn.
Wait.
I second it real quick.
Discussion.
No discussion.
Also
All
moved.
those in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Cindy, that was a smart move.
Thank you.
Awesome,
Wow.
Sin, thanks.
The clerk was having trouble making the motion.
I look forward to working with you, Paul.
Oh, thank you.
All right.
Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Now we need to just vote on 2 select board members to assist the planning director with reviewing and possibly interviewing at-large applicants to serve on the MBTA Communities Working Group. This is interesting. Did we get a lot of talent bank forms for this?
Yes.
Yes.
So enough that we have to interview people.
To 4 spots, we have more than 4, so yes.
Nice.
Okay.
But that seems like a short commitment.
That's a
That
one
may
and
be
done.
a one and done.
Yeah.
Okay, if we can,
gonna be
I
something.
know Brian wants to do it. I'll be the second on that if we can do it on a Friday morning.
I move that the select board, well, no, I'm not clear.
Oh, no,
Well.
do you want to move for yourself?
I'm happy to, well, unless, does anyone else want
I'm
to?
just so excited to get these done.
Does anybody else, did
No,
anybody
no,
else
no,
want to
no,
do it? Just move us both.
All
at the
right,
same
so this is H, right? So I move that the select board appoint Amy and myself to assist interim planning director Paul Halkiotis with interviewing and selecting 4 at-large applicants to serve on the MBTA Communities Working Group.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. We move on to our,
Paul.
thank you very much. Discussion pertaining to our town manager's annual evaluation. Jeannie's going to lead us off.
Good evening. I'm Jeannie Horn, the Human Resources Director for the town of Duxbury, and Duxbury resident, Buckboard Road. So the Select Board has in their packets tonight several documents. You have a copy of the memo that I will be reviewing. You have a copy of the town manager's aggregated performance evaluation, a copy of the town manager's performance evaluation document that was voted by the Select Board on March 4th, a copy of the Select Board's goals that were voted on April 1st, and a copy of the proposed fiscal year 25 personnel action request form affecting a pay change for the town manager on July 1st. And then you also have motions that I'll walk through as well. So in terms of the, in terms of the memo states that the current performance evaluation cycle covering the May 1st, 2023 through March 31st, 2024 timeframe has nearly concluded. We began this evaluation cycle 6 weeks earlier than we have in the past, so we started it on March 25th in order to provide more time to memorialize job performance compared to job expectations and outline expectations and goals for the upcoming evaluation cycle. So now we're in our 3rd year of implementing the classification and compensation study recommendations. We continue to make incremental changes based on our ability to pay, budget accordingly, and adjust pay rates based on recommendations from the compensation and classification study. And we are completing those efforts, in order to attract and retain the most qualified employees to serve our community. Earlier this year, I drank all my water Earlier this year, the Finance Committee, Select Board, and March annual town meeting voters approved Article 4 funding to meet our objectives of maintaining the established pay structures designed to deliver equitable compensation based on the town's ability to pay. This will provide employees appointed by an elected body, such as the town manager, employees with employment contracts
and employees under the personnel policies in grades 1 through 15 with pay changes effective July 1st, 2024, based on the following methodology. Excuse me. A 3% general increase to move employees within the pay range for their grade from fiscal year 24 to 25. So you may remember in Article 4 at annual town meeting, we increased the bottom and the top of each pay range by 3%. So in order for employees not to fall behind, we need to increase individual pay by 3% so that people can move within the pay range. And then the merit increase allows people to move forward in the pay range. So there's essentially two vehicles that town employees can use for that purpose. And then we also provided, again, years of service pay in position for employees with compensation who even with 10 years of service in their current position were still below the midpoint of the range for their grade. So I do a calculation based on where people would be in the range if we place them perfectly, and best practice is to have people within 10% of that marker. So you'll see that if an individual was not at least the midpoint by 7 to 10 years of service, they were provided with a 1% increase, and then for 10 to 13 years of service, a 4% increase, 13 to 16 years of service, a 9% increase, and 16 or more years of service, a 10% increase. We're talking about a handful of employees. There's 19 people who are impacted by this. And in those upper categories, there's only there's very few people. The bulk of the people that we're talking about are in the 7 to 10 years with a 1%. So it's just another measure to ensure that people continue to be compensated equitably. So then finally, the merit award increase, which this board specifically asked us to focus on this year in order to differentiate pay based on performance. I will say that there are not many communities who do this, and it is something that's valued by the town of Duxbury, and it's something that we worked hard to achieve this year. And we made that calculation based on the 1.5% funding pool that was approved by annual town meeting, linking the performance ratings to merit awards. I worked closely with Mary McKinnon on this project, so I thank her very much on that part of it in terms of making sure that all the numbers worked. And these awards were determined by grouping the performance ratings into tiers using decile rankings to analyze the data and to apply a percentage increase. So what we did was we came up with performance rating ranges. So when individuals received a performance rating score between 90 and 100%, they were awarded a 1.7% merit award. So we were able to do that to distribute the available merit funding in accordance with the merit ratings. We did have a distribution of those ratings. So we were able to determine that this was a methodology that we could sustain and repeat in terms of the mathematical calculation on an annual basis. And we can tweak it as necessary. So as you may recall, last year, Cindy asked, who was the select board chairperson at the time, asked myself, Fernando, Brian, and Rainey to meet to recommend enhancements on the town manager's performance evaluation and the merit award process overall, especially, as I said, the link between the evaluation rating and merit award. As part of that effort, we accomplished the following. We examined the performance evaluation and merit award cycle, the evaluation template, the town manager employment contract, the town manager act, and the open meeting law to ensure that we were in compliance. We confirmed with town council that the select board's review and vote of the final aggregated town manager evaluation and relational pay changes need to happen in open session, as they are happening tonight, during a properly posted meeting, open to the public and in conformance with open meeting law requirements, and that public comment is not permitted during this portion of the meeting. The comments are isolated to just the select board at this time. And we updated the job performance evaluation form to make it easier and tied more closely to the town manager's duties so that the select boards could assess performance and provide feedback. We redefined the performance evaluation ratings so that they are now outstanding is a 4, exceeds expectations is a 3, meets expectations is a 2, and does not meet expectations is a 1. So previously, we did have 4 ratings, but 2 of them were below meeting expectations. So we thought it was important to make the assumption that that employees will be meeting expectations. So this makes the job of the supervisor more clear. Either people are or are not meeting expectations in terms of jobs. And then it allows for persons who are performing beyond those expectations to be rewarded more generously. And we extended and realigned the overall performance evaluation and merit award calendar to conform with budget and payroll cycles. We recommended that the select board establish their own goals each year at their first meeting following the annual town election so that the town manager's goals can be related when established thereafter during the performance evaluation cycle. And then we also confirmed that in accordance with the town manager's contract, that the board and the town manager define the goals mutually, and those are voted as part of this process tonight. And then lastly, so just to review a little bit more about the process, each board member had an opportunity to review their own evaluation of the town manager's performance. Those evaluation documents were consolidated into an aggregate document. And then the chair had an opportunity to schedule a meeting with the town manager to deliver that information, and then we scheduled this open meeting in order to finalize those conversations. And so the next steps are for the select board to consider and vote the following: the aggregated town manager performance evaluation document that's been provided to you, to mutually agree to the goals, and that's why the select board goals were provided to you in the packet, and to consider and vote the compensation change proposed effective 7/1. Any questions?
Yeah, just for clarification, right? In the document, basically, it says Duxbury Selectboard Town Manager Performance Evaluation. The one that you read with, it basically had 3% general increase, years of service, and the merit, right? Just want to double check, right? The 3% general increase to move employees within the pay range for their grade from fiscal year 24-25, right? So that moves pay range for their grade. And I just want to check, Rennie doesn't have a pay range. Rennie, our town manager is a contract employee.
Right, but correct. His contract does not have a set
pay range.
Doesn't have a set salary every year. So the practice has always been to include, and with the contracts where they're silent fall to the personnel policies. So there are 2 other contracts in town, and their pay is contractual every fiscal year. Rainey's is not.
So the 2 other employees or contractors or contract employees, they get the 3%?
Their salaries are negotiated at the time that their contract is approved.
Right.
So it's in advance.
So it's, okay.
So another way to look at the 3% is that best practice is that non-union pay should be at least reflective of union pay. So as I mentioned earlier, non-union employees have 2 quote-unquote vehicles to move themselves through the salary range. A step for a union employee in the town of Duxbury is worth no less than 5%. So union employees get a step if they're eligible. It depends on the contract because they will max out on the steps. Contracts run anywhere from 3 steps to 8 steps in the town of Duxbury. Right. And then in addition to that, there is an annual increase that's provided.
Yeah.
So
I
typically,
Oh, I understand, Jeannie. I wasn't involved. The town manager's contract was established before I joined the board, right?
Yes.
So I don't know the content, actually, to be
Yes.
frank, of that and what negotiations took
Yes.
place. It just seems that we are taking that 3%, which is basically for graded employees that have a known salary range, right?
Right.
That you can assess.
Mhm.
And if we're comparing it to a contract.
Right.
That's negotiated on a
Right.
3-year basis or 4-year
Right.
basis, which would have terms
Yes.
of
Yes.
any increases for cost of living or something like that. Does the town manager's contract have a cost of living adjustment?
It does not.
Doesn't.
It
It's just
does not.
basically a straight yearly.
So every year, the board sets his salary.
Right.
So the rationale behind the pay change, the change to the pay scale or the pay range is to keep competitive with to be competitive with our competitive set community. So it's a way to ensure that we are
I
being
understand
as-
that. Are all town managers in other towns are all contract?
Yes.
Okay. It's all contract, okay.
And I just want to make sure that I understand, we are not comparing the 3% general increase to move employees within the range. What you're suggesting is that we adopt that 3% for Rainey's contract.
So, yes, so the reason why I bring all of this up together
Yeah.
is because Rainey because his contract does not include negotiated pay increases on an annual basis.
Right.
Our town manager has always followed the methodology that we've used to provide pay increases to personnel policies employees.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's been past practice, right, that we've done?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, for 16 years.
When is the town manager's contract up for renewal?
2 years from now.
Okay.
This is the most awkward, we're talking about you as if you're not sitting here.
I mean, no,
So it's a very awkward.
He's the town manager. I have no idea who Rennie is, but anyway.
That's why
I'm
I've got
just
thick
talking about the
skin.
town manager.
I've got thick skin, it's no biggie.
Amy, do you have any questions or comments?
I have lots of comments, but I won't, it's already almost 9:30. So I think that as we move forward with this process and when we look to next year, I would ask that the aggregated comments, what they've done is they've taken all of our individual, or what Jeannie's done is taken our individual evaluations and compiled all of our comments and made them anonymous. And I think that has created a less than transparent process. I believe that, if you're a voter, a resident in the town, and you want to know what our comments were, you cannot now look into that document and know what my comment was versus your comment. So I think in the spirit of transparency, that, we should each own our comments. I mean, I have no problem owning mine. I don't know about the rest of you, but I just think that, and maybe nobody ever looks at these things and wants to know what somebody said about somebody else. I don't know, but I just, again, I think it's weird that we all do this. I took a lot of time doing mine. I stand by my comments, but then to make them anonymous just flies in the face of.
And just to be clear, I was following the agreement that the select board entered into on, I believe it was March 4th. So I just want, and so you're
don't know
certainly.
where that came from, so I.
Right, but I just wanted to be clear that I have a responsibility to follow the process that was
Yeah, no, I
previously
understand. I
agreed
don't
to.
know how that came about.
If one of the things we said, right, is this is the first time we've done this, right, and we developed this process, So Brian and I and Jeannie and the town manager, we worked on it, right? So it's always up, continuous improvement. We can look at it next year before we roll it out, and if the board so chooses, they want to make their comments and put their names to it, we can talk about it then and vote on it.
And that's what that's
Yeah.
what I would suggest. And
Okay.
and then another comment just on this moving forward is a cap on the percentage. You know, when salaries start to get up there, these percentages, you know, they're aggregated over, you know, every year. It's 3% this year, then it's 3% on top of the increase of 3% this year, and they can snowball. And I don't know what that appropriate cap is, but I do know that a lot of municipalities do have a cap. And maybe, I think I talked to you about this, and you said, you know, we're not there. We don't have anybody that's over, you know, a couple $100,000. And you know, that's great, but we might be someday, and so we
Right.
really should think about some of those.
Right, so to your point, we actually have our first classification and compensation study meeting scheduled for June 10th with the team. So part of the work that we will be doing with GovHR is projecting what our salary costs will be for the next 3 to 5 years. So obviously, it is a big expense, and it is something that we watch as carefully as, you know, the health insurance trust fund. So it is certainly something that we can have a conversation with them about in terms of recommendations.
And that does that study, sorry, Brian was going, sorry.
Well, no, it was just a comment or following up on something you mentioned with the performance awards and laying them out very specifically so that the town employees will know where their merit awards are likely to end up based upon their performance. And you said that Duxbury is fairly unique on that. And I just wanted to commend the HR department and this board, assuming we vote for it, that this is something that distinguishes Duxbury a little bit more, where we're in the service business, or at least the employees are in the service business, so we're better aligning incentives with, and of course, everybody shows up and does great work, but whenever we can better align incentives with what we need in terms of performance, I think that's a great thing to do, and I see we've done that here, and I just want to acknowledge it, appreciate the work that went into it.
But can I make a comment on that? But because, sorry, but just to follow up on that, because I agree with you. I think that, and especially the people who aren't making a ton of money, I would like to reward them for excellent service. So if you get, you know, if you get a 90 to 100% rating, your merit award is 1.7. But then, right now, you know, we're talking about a 3% for a much higher salaried person, which I think sometimes can be a little bit tough to take when you're somebody who's making 50,000 as opposed to the higher earners. You know, that percentage, it seems to me, should be higher for the lower paid people and lower for the higher paid people, because.
But it's not based, but Amy, it's based on the people's pay ranges, right? That they're working in. That so. It's based on the market, right?
Equal pay for equal work.
Of comparable work, right? So that's the basis by which it's done.
Right. I mean.
And so therefore, if you have a more complicated job, which requires higher qualifications or whatever it is, the job is described and the skill set and the requirements for that job, and then the pay gets associated for that job, and therefore that 3% is about keeping us competitive in the marketplace.
I agree with you there.
Okay.
What
All
I'm
right, yes.
saying is that we're adopting what we're being asked tonight is to apply the 3% increase to one of the highest paid, and it's
Right.
not based on a scale or that analysis.
But it is based on the ability to continue to attract and retain individuals at every level of our organization, because these are the kinds of pay increases that our competitive set is offering.
Yeah, so that,
So it's relational.
Right. So what we need to do is we need to, we've established competitive market for all salaries, right? We've been out there, and we just need to do the same for the town manager, and I presume you do that for the two other contract employees
Yes.
that we do, right?
Yep.
So.
And they're all
we must,
included in the study.
right. At the end of the day, every position in there, we must ensure that we are paying a fair price for a job well done, right? And so we must be competitive. We want, again, just like we want an excellent fire person, an excellent DPW worker, we want an excellent town manager, right? So we got to be competitive and within the marketplace and pay fairly. So we need to look at that, and you're updating it, yeah. So that's where the 3%, and the 3% may change. It may get less, or in fact we may get more. I don't know, right? But that's part of the study that we're going to get.
That's right.
Cindy, do you have any?
I have nothing.
I was just looking over our protocol that we did pass, and I just wanted to make sure we kind of did what we proposed. And I guess to Amy's point, it says the results will be compiled into one document that will be aggregated for the board. I don't know either if that meant anonymous. I mean,
It's always been anonymous.
right.
You
So
can change it.
I think that there's no reason for that. And I don't, like Amy, I own my comments. But to that point, that was something that was my primary, not concern, but like primary benefit to this process is this dialogue that we're having. We're setting goals. We're communicating with our town manager about our expectations. He's communicating to us about what his goals are. So I guess to follow this map, based on our comments as aggregated, Rainey, have you had the occasion has anybody asked for a one-on-one meeting?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. I had a one-on-one meeting with Rennie.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Great. And number two, do you have any kind of thoughts on any of these comments? I know that some of them are very specific, but.
No, I thought they were great, and I appreciate the feedback.
Right.
Yeah.
I know we're not judged. We are by the voters, but.
You were every year. Every election
3
cycle.
years.
Yeah. No, I was fine with them. No, I found it very productive. I thought it worked out well.
In fact, I've noticed some improved feedback.
Yeah.
Thanks, Dad.
I mean, and to be honest, like.
The highest compliment I can pay you.
Some of my comments I'd already addressed to with Rainey in other settings when I'm talking about agendas.
Yeah, we all talk constantly.
And we, even with the email situation, I had a really wonderful conversation with Rainey and Nancy about why we do what we do, as far as.
It's been a really long email. I kind of.
No. So
Why we do what
one of
we
my
do.
comments on here, just generally, was about how the public interacts with us on the website, and how it goes to essentially the town manager first.
Right.
We don't have our individual emails up there. Or
Right,
anything
that's
like
right.
that. And that sometimes we learn about something
Right.
sometime
After the fact. Yeah.
or someone comes up to us and they say, "Didn't you read my email?"
Right.
But I had a wonderful conversation about that. We had some ideas, maybe putting something on there to let people know that they are not contacting us directly. So I think this is a productive
Yeah.
way of doing things.
I think it's very productive, and where we go from here, getting back to, I had put in some suggestions as well. I know, and we're talking about that right now, performance, merit, these increases. We have done and redone the classification study, continuously providing more compensation for employees because retention has been an issue. And one of the suggestions I made in the review is to do a a anonymous survey within town hall of our, and within the town of our employees, and try to get some feedback as to, you know, what their thoughts, what they're liking and not liking. I think that would be, you know, I think there's some suggestions and comments in here that I wonder how we bring those to fruition.
Cool. Upward feedback.
Yeah, I mean,
Great-
where do we
great-
go from
great,
here?
yeah.
If we just leave this document, I guarantee next year we're
No,
gonna read it again. We won't,
no,
we won't fall, so.
No, we won't.
Well-
We'll put that team together and we'll look at it again, right? We will.
Yeah, well, let's think about this. I do think a survey would be a helpful
that.
tool for all of us.
I think it's hard, especially if employees don't know members of the board, for them to reach out and say something. And we do have turnover. I don't sit in exit interviews. I don't, you know, and I don't have people calling me and often. But I also want to hear good things too. You know, so, you know, I'm not looking for like complaints. I expect we have a lot of long-term employees, a lot of people that are happy work. It's a great place to work. And, you know, I expect there'd be a lot of positive comments and ways people want to help more. You know, you see that with a lot of our employees. They're picking up things that are outside their job. So, without more, I think it's not a bad idea, just to reinforce some of maybe the positive things that we're seeing and thinking, because I don't have all those interactions.
Yeah, I think it would give them a good opportunity to, yeah. All right, so what are we doing here?
Oh, well, I will go. I think we're at,
Do we?
we're at number
vote?
11. The
Right,
board
we-
will formally adopt to the aggregated evaluation document and any modifications there too. I believe that's part of it, right? Or do we have a
Yeah.
suggested
Well,
motion?
there's three motions.
Great.
The first is the aggregated evaluation document, and that's what we've just been talking about. That's the one, well, in addition to all of our individual comments, it also importantly averages our ratings for each of the categories.
Yep.
And also, very importantly, at the very end, has an overall select board average. And the scale, let me just go back to my other document.
There's 4.
Yeah. But just for the public's information, the way we set this up is there are 4 categories or 4 levels of ratings based upon a number of categories that we're rated rainy on. It ranges 1 to 4, 1 being the lowest of does not meet expectations, to the highest, number 4, is outstanding. So with respect to the document itself, I suppose I can go through each one if we want, but otherwise, the overall average that the select board voted was 2.93. So that comes in as between, flipping between documents here, comes in between meets expectations and exceeds, and it's almost, if we round up, it exceeds expectations overall. So that's a very well-done job, I think, given that there were many categories we graded you on, and you had 5 different subjective graders, right? So, Jeannie, anything to add to that? I mean, it's kind of how the process went. It's
Exactly.
pretty straightforward in terms of what we all did. We sat down and clicked some numbers of what we thought was an appropriate
Yeah.
grade for each of the categories. We included comments as we thought were appropriate, and it all boiled down to a number.
I mean, the number, but I think the comments are that we all put together in here are good.
Yeah.
I mean, great information, and I think are helpful for our town manager.
All right, so happy to make
Ready
a
for
motion.
motions, thank
Okay. So the document I just described, I will move the select board adopt the aggregated evaluation document as presented.
Second.
All those in favor? Oops.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. So the next one is the mutually defined and prioritized goals as presented. I don't think we've talked about that. Really.
No.
Didn't we already vote on that?
We already voted on that.
I think Rainey has an update. Do you have an update on the goals?
Yeah, you had voted the goals on April 1st.
Right.
This thing. I did have a question, though, on the last two. I don't know that I'm going to be able to get those done in a year. That's the problem.
I don't think we have those in front of us.
That's the last.
They're in your
It's called Select Board
packet.
Goals 2024, voted by the Duxbury Select-Board on April 1st,
Looking at
2024.
attachment, it was just at the
It's
bottom. of
5 items, looks like this, if you've got it in front of you.
Yeah.
From June.
So
Right here,
number
right.
5 is work with the Coastal Resiliency
Okay.
Task Force and Alternative Energy Committee
Yeah.
to advance climate resiliency initiatives, including exploring and presenting to Select Board potential funding sources. Now, that's number 5. And then number 6 is work with the Water Advisory Board, Board of Health, and other necessary committees to advance water quality and PFAS mitigation initiatives, including exploring and presenting to Select Board potential funding sources. I don't, my interpretation, I'll just jump in here, because I do, is
Pretty
basically that these are multi-year.
That's what I wanted to hear.
To me, that's multi-year, and we'll track progress, right?
Yeah, because they're definitely going to go beyond the scope of 12
For
months.
sure, but so many things would, right? I mean,
Well, no, the other 4 can all be done in a
Progress.
year.
Yeah.
Just, I thought when we assembled these different deliverables that some intentionally would carry over
Fine.
more than 1 year, so
Yep.
that you weren't focused on just fiscal year to fiscal year. You had other things that had a tail.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
As long as we're clear, that
Yep.
particularly those 2.
And I, as a drafter of this, partially, I use the word work with, and I believe we talked about this too, and using this including language broadly, so that if these groups do come to you and would like you to would like to work with us or through a liaison, that we can do that. But if they don't, then they don't. And it's, but, I think that's part of the benefit of having liaisons here too, is that if there is something we need to hit a deadline, say with the alternative energy or something like that, great, bring it to your attention, throw it on ask you to put it on an agenda.
And I give you this evening's agenda as an example of number 6,
And that would be work with.
sure.
because that's what happened tonight.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I'm sorry to bring this up, but both of those items on this list are the only 2 items that include the word potential funding sources. And I would just ask that while we certainly can't solve those big issues in this year, those are going to be ongoing for sure.
Yeah.
But trying to work on potential funding sources just we need to be doing that, and I
Second that.
fear waiting on that part of these things. So
Yeah. It's a big question I have every time these items come up is how are we going to pay for it?
Yep.
And there's a lot of buckets, but maybe not our buckets.
Well, that answers my question then. Thank you.
All right.
So next is the compensation change.
The last one.
Compensation change is
You need
next.
to vote number
Okay.
So we need,
2. Or actually, no, you
Well,
don't.
no, we don't need to.
No, you don't. You did it already.
yeah.
We don't need to do 2.
You cool with that, Jeannie?
Number 3.
Who's number 3?
But I think Jeannie's going to present, right, on this?
Compensate, what is could we
On
just
the
have
compensation
what
piece?
the
Sure.
exact compensation change language
Sure.
we need
That's
is?
in the PAR, the Personnel Action Request Form.
Yeah.
It looks like this.
So the proposed pay
email?
change,
Just on the, it wasn't,
Yeah, it's in the packet.
Here, take this one.
So the 1.25.
Thank you.
so the
correlates with that
proposed pay
7.
change for fiscal year '25, effective 7/1 of '24, is a 3% general increase and a 1.25% merit award, in accordance with the methodology described earlier.
All right.
I got a probably important question. Did we budget for this?
Yep.
It comes out of Article 4,
Yeah.
which was voted and approved by FinCom, Select Board, and Annual Town Meeting.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Good question.
That's weird. Okay, thanks.
are we gonna make a motion?
I'm happy to make a motion.
Yes, oh yeah, sorry.
All right, I move that the Select Board accept the compensation change for Rennie Reed, Town Manager, commencing July 1, 2024.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Jeannie.
Can I have that back, please?
Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
right.
There we go.
All right, so where are we on?
Town manager's report.
Town manager's report.
Oh, yeah, town manager's report.
All right, now I'm going to earn my keep. Here we go, town manager's report. I wanted to let you all know, in case you haven't seen it already, but it's an update. There is a household hazardous waste collection day this coming Saturday. The town of Duxbury is hosting it through the South Shore Recycling Cooperative. It's going to be this Saturday from 9 to 1 at in the high school parking lot. Residents must register in advance. Info on how to register and accepted materials is available on the DPW webpage, the DPW Facebook page, and the South Shore Recycling Collaborative website. They are not accepting latex paint because you don't need to, that's not a hazmat, you just take the can off and let it dry. If you want to accelerate the drying process, throw kitty litter in it, it expedites it about 5 times faster. There's also a link that'll show you everything you need to do. Like I said, you have to pre-register. It's very easy to do. With respect to East Street and the closure of that road, based on the most recent information I've received from the DPW director, Sheila Scarzi, the date of the East Street bridge closure is scheduled for Tuesday, June 18th, which is the day after the last day of school, which is Monday the 17th. Apparently, Mass DOT got off to a slow start, so as she told me, she wouldn't be surprised if the closure date gets pushed back again. If anything changes, I'll let you all know, and it'll also be on the DPW website. With respect to Duxbury Beach, all 3 crossovers unfortunately are closed. Currently, there are 45 piping plover pairs with 32 active nests and 10 broods of chicks at Duxbury Beach. There may be 1 or 2 additional pairs that have not yet nested. Peak hatching is just around the corner, as these first few broods are joined by others. To date, 10 nests have been lost, 8 of those due to not predation, but due to predators. Last year, by June 3rd, there were 46 nests out of the total of 46 pairs that ended up nesting. Least terns are settling into the historic colonies on Duxbury and have begun to lay their eggs. Based on chick locations, all crossovers are currently closed as of 6/3. That's today, excuse me, June 3rd. Dogs are allowed at Duxbury Beach. Currently, leashed dogs are allowed in the parking lots, on roadways, and on the existing and the bayside extending a quarter mile south of the Powder Point Bridge. The speed limit for Duxbury Beach is 15 miles an hour and is 5 miles per hour within the sensitive wildlife areas. Field staff have observed a lot of vehicles going fast down the road. We ask them to slow down. In addition, impatient drivers are passing vehicles going the speed limit. Passing is not allowed unless the vehicle in front pulls into a pullout. The road is very narrow, and in many locations, and visibility may be limited. Please also consider that there are other users, dog walkers, bikers, runners, in addition to the shorebird monitors and the beach rangers along the roadway, and passing may put them in danger. Sensitive wildlife areas are in effect in several places along the beach and the road. And as a reminder, within the sensitive wildlife areas, beachgoers are allowed to set up beach blankets. They are delineated by large blue signs with white lettering. They're established around unfledged piping plover chick areas, and certain activities are not allowed, including dogs, bikes, vehicles, kites, and other beach sports adversely impacting the chicks, and it's a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit on the back road, and that is related, again, to the sensitive wildlife areas. And finally, hold on, I'm going to get you in a sec. Yep. And finally, with respect to something that Brian had mentioned at the very beginning of the meeting, with regard to the Duxbury High School, this past weekend we did have a nice run of terrific weather, which made for a beautiful day for a graduation. And on that note, I want to offer my sincerest congratulations to the class of 2024, not just here, but also in Kingston, where others had kids graduating. And we wish you all the best in your future endeavors. Yes.
Looks like we're once again having problems with people exceeding the posted speed limit on the back road there.
Yeah.
Right? So remember last time it caused issues, and we had to put in an alternative plan and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, yes.
And it ended up costing us money, right, to be able to control that. So what
are we going to do?
What are we going to do about it?
See? Yeah. Well, we've got school closing on the 17th, and
Right.
as had been previously prescribed, we're going to roll over the SRO onto the beach.
Yep.
In the meantime, I'll be talking with Mike if we need to step up, not you, Mike
You can talk with me
Carbone.
too, please.
Yeah, well, you'll know.
I have my thoughts.
With Mike Carbone to see if we can get guys and gals out there during their normal sector patrols to help out to
Right.
keep people reasonable. If you're at the beach, for God's sake, slow down. It's really simple.
One of the things they were talking about was a lot of the traffic is going to Gurnish, right? But the Gurnish folks are saying that they're just basically people just driving along sightseeing, right? Are we now checking the vehicles that go not just for, obviously, all the vehicles going now must be
We certainly
for
are,
Gurney, right? Are
because
we
of
checking, Are we checking that they are actually true Gurnet and Saquesh people,
Residents.
and or they're just tourists?
The idea is that they are being stopped at the guardhouse because that was one of the things that was
Right.
prescribed to us last summer, that
The
we make
first
sure we stop.
guardhouse, on the bridge,
the
not out
bridge.
at the Gurnet.
Yes, I'm sorry, thank
First-
you. Yes,
okay.
as you cross the bridge, the guardhouse immediately to the right,
Yeah,
the minute you get over the bridge. Yes, they're all being stopped there. Who are you? What are you doing?
okay.
Not in an interrogating way, but in a nice way. So, but yes, they are being stopped. And by the way, as I look at you, I'm thinking of an email I sent earlier today. I'm in the process of working through the idea of what may become an intermunicipal agreement with the town of Plymouth to see what we can do, what we can't do. I've got the email off to Jeff, and I've got Mike Carbone and Rob Reardon involved in that as well, because we were looking at call volumes where the town of Duxbury responds to Plymouth incidents out at Garnet Saquesh. So I'm letting you know that now so that I can tell you later what the result of that is. So
Good, well, good.
The ball's
because-
rolling.
Because I think, and we were talking about this earlier, that the Duxbury Beach patrons, the overseas vehicles, are very aware that they need to obey by the speed limits, and they're, it seems to me, and I've been out walking, because I've been walking the road lately with the dog, that they're abiding by the speed limit. It does seem that the people that are flying by you that don't care about the speed limit are the Saquesh and Gurnet
Yeah.
residents,
Well,
because there's
but-
no recourse. They're not, we can't kick them off the beach, so it's a real conundrum.
Yeah, but since the crossovers are closed, the only people,
Out
the
there
only
now,
people
are
that are going,
That's what I was gonna kind of get at here.
the only people that are going.
The start of his report, June 3rd,
Yeah,
can't go out there unless
go out there.
you're
going to
live out in
Saquesh.
Plymouth.
Yeah, that's the only
I
reason
mean,
why.
so what are we talking about here? We're putting.
the speeding observations that I had noted earlier were provided to me, and it's sort of a look back over the past week,
Why are we putting an
2
extra
weeks.
officer or
I
police
mean, why are we
officers
putting
out there?
officers out there and enforcing a 5-mile-an-hour speed limit for people from Plymouth and bird monitors?
It's
Because
part-
it's one of the things we have to do.
We have to do that.
Yeah.
You know that, we have to, it's part of the HCP.
Oh, I heard.
Right.
Yeah.
You know that.
I will
I
also
know.
tell you, though, in spite of the fact that we do have to close all 3 crossovers, there's some interesting news here. It seems that the pallet project that was undertaken by the folks at Save Duxbury Beach, it looks like it worked. It did deter the birds from nesting in those areas. What it didn't deter was the birds from nesting in areas right next to the pallets. So instead of landing on top of the pallets or near them, they landed in areas that are south and north of where they were put. So it worked, but I guess the object might be to line the whole beach. I don't even know if that's permissible, but I know that there were, in this test run for this first year, a finite amount of space was defined, and I believe it was 2 acres. And so they covered that with the pallets, but in that area where they were deployed, they did work. So it's a.
They just need
it's
a path to get there.
Yeah, it's a sort of a measured success, if you will. So the experiment seems to have worked, and perhaps with something we can expand upon in future years.
Yeah.
So I know people are dissatisfied with the
Always
fact they can't get out there, but maybe it'll accelerate their fledging process. Who knows?
Yeah.
Any luck with finding a place to store the sand?
Yes, we've found a place, but now we're trying to make sure that the grain, believe it or not, that the grain size will work with what we want to do with it ultimately, which is put it in front of the seawall.
Right, okay,
So I
good.
got to make sure the grain size works. If that works, then maybe we're off to the races. I will keep you posted though, but I don't have an update on that yet. I won't have one until tomorrow, actually.
Question, Mr. Chairman. You mentioned that dogs are allowed on the bay side. Are dogs not allowed on the beach itself?
Dogs are
leash
allowed at
dogs?
Duxbury Beach, but you gotta have them on a leash.
Okay, so
No,
people
not
can
on the
still,
wa-
Yeah, you can.
On the walk-on?
Not on the walk-on. You have to
That's all that's
cross over, right, at the
Currently,
first cross.
here's what it says.
crossover.
Dogs are allowed at Duxbury Beach. I didn't write this. Currently, leash dogs are allowed in parking lots, on roadways, and on the bayside extending a quarter-mile south of the Powder Point Bridge.
The Bayside, you used to be able to
more
cross over onto Big Beach and walk
Yeah.
below.
They're allowed at the beach, but in those specific areas.
You can walk down the road with a dog.
yeah.
You can walk through the parking lot with a dog. You can walk, 100 yards on the south side of the bridge, on the bayside, but you can't walk with a dog on the walk-on beach, and certainly not on the crossovers.
So you can't have a dog on the sand?
Correct.
I guess not.
So
Must have
if anybody has
changed.
any question, I would suggest that you check either the town's website, the DPR website, or the pamphlet that is given to people when they purchase a sticker or they cross that bridge. It's all contained in there.
My
Anybody?
dog's gonna be
I think my
bummed
dog's
out.
gonna be upset. Okay.
Yeah. Elvis had a good run last couple of weekends.
That's all I
Anyhow.
got. That's all I got.
Board and committee appointments, reappointments, and resignations.
Okay, so I move that the following individuals are appointed or reappointed to the following boards and committees for the following terms. Alternative Energy Committee, Douglas Carver, reappointment through June 30, 2027. Zoning Board of Appeals, Philip Thorne, for a reappointment through June 30, 2029. Is this right? We have 2029 and then two for 2025?
2029.
It's gotta be 2025, right?
Yeah.
2029,
5 years.
5-year. There you go.
All right. So Philip Thorne, reappointment for June 30, 2029. Boris, somebody's going to help me with this one. As written. Alternate reappointment through June 30, 2025. Tanya Trevison is an alternate reappointment through June 30, 2025. Coastal Resiliency Task Force. Mickey Daniel McGonigal as the Conservation Commission representative, David Amory at large, Lenore White at large, all for reappointments through June 30, 2025. Conservation Commission, Rob D'Ambrosio, Mickey Daniel McGonigal, both for reappointments through June 30, 2027. MBTA Advisory Board, myself, for reappointment through June 30, 2025. MBTA Communities Working Group, Robert Tag Carpenter, Planning Board Representative, appointment through June 30, 2025. The Shellfish Advisory Committee, Richard Brennan, Craig M. Bloodgood, and Robert Loring, all for reappointments through June 30, 2027. Sidewalk and Bike Path Committee, Christopher Dean, reappointment through June 30, 2027.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let's see here, we have...
Could you announce some resignations, and
Yes.
we will give some thanks.
We have a number of resignations from the Age and Dementia Friendly Task Force, Nancy McDermott, from the Alternative Energy Committee, Suzanne Fontaine, Matt Koenig, and Louis Siegel. From the King Caesar Advisory Committee, Dr. Carol A. Langford.
Thank you very much for serving on these committees.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Greatly appreciate that. And we have some other boards and committees that have available seats.
Do. The Age and Dementia Friendly Task Force has 1 seat. The Alternative Energy Committee has 2 seats. Coastal Resiliency Task Force has 1 seat. Economic Advisory Committee has 1 seat. Finance Committee has 1 seat. Fiscal Advisory Committee has a seat. Historical Commission has 1 seat. King Caesar Advisory Committee has 2 seats. And the Nuclear Advisory Committee has 1 seat. If anyone is interested in volunteering on a board or committee, you are encouraged to fill out a talent bank form, which can be found on the town's website under the Forms and Documents tab.
And recently, the Zoning Board of Appeals, it wasn't on that list, but they have asked for talent bank forms for, I believe, an alternate seat as well.
Cool.
We have 1-day liquor license requests. First one being a stroll, Pine Hills at the Nathaniel Windsor Junior House. It looks like, I don't know if anybody's here from that.
No.
But it looks like everything's in order. And there's 2-hour event with alcohol service. Does anybody have any questions? Are we ready for a motion?
No, I have a question, but I can't find it. Hold on, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Here we go. Okay, so when you look at the comments from, I'm sorry, from the department feedback, Louis Chubb says, because this is a 2-hour event with alcohol service, DPD recommends the applicant be required to provide some type of food service as a condition of the license. Other than that, the DPD has no objection. I don't see that there's been any food service added, so I just want to bring that up as a issue.
I can't think of, maybe Rainey can chime in. Have we ever mandated someone provide food with
Cheese and
alcohol?
crackers.
No, we haven't.
Yeah.
Is this at the Nathaniel Windsor House?
Yeah.
No, we have not.
I can't imagine that they're going to have alcohol without some kind of
Probably have
goodies.
some cheese and crackers.
I would think so.
I'm not really worried about it.
Well, yeah, but I don't want to disregard a comment from the police department. Sounds completely reasonable to me. I think we should require them to have something really yummy.
Yeah, you
got
got
to eat something.
They are adults.
Well, they say type of food to be served, not applicable, so I just,
This is the first time I've seen the police department make this request.
Me
right?
Don't drink on an empty stomach.
that's because
Maybe he's going and he wants some goodies.
I think,
You can walk across the street and get dinner,
But
or go next door.
why does Lieutenant Chubb throw this at us at
I
10
don't know,
o'clock
at
at
10
night?
o'clock.
Well, we can make it a condition.
Make it a condition he has to provide cheese and crackers.
Yeah, the Lieutenant Chubb has to provide cheese and crackers.
It's not required.
Can you do that
Okay,
for
you
us,
can do
Nancy?
that, Nancy.
Yes,
Yeah,
please, thank
okay,
you.
Nancy can do that.
okay.
Nancy.
Should we tell them what kind of cheese and crackers?
No.
Or you guys-
No,
Okay.
just
Cheddar, do you
provide
want a
some
cheddar?
food
Jesus.
No, I'm kidding.
as,
I
as,
move-
Mr.
yeah.
Gruyere over here.
I move that Ms. Katerina Devlin, as a representative of Plus Ventures / Stroll Pine Hills, is granted a 1-day wine and malt license for their Stroll Pine Hills at the Windsor House on Wednesday, June 5, 2024, from 4:30 p.m. to 6:30 p.m. at the Nathaniel Windsor House, 479 Washington Street, and contingent upon the conditions of the license as amended.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we have another 1-day liquor license from Greet Duxbury and the Duxbury Rural Historic Society for a reception. And let's see, this is also at the Nathaniel Windsor House.
Does Mr. Chubb say crackers as well?
And,
No, they're bringing it anyways. Susie's all squared away.
Yeah, I think this is all
It's
set.
all prepackaged.
So
right.
there's no,
Yep,
Ready for motion?
I'm ready for a motion.
I move that Ms. Susan Udy, as a representative of the Duxbury Rural and Historical Society, is granted a 1-day wine and malt license to hold a reception on Wednesday, June 12, 2024, from 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. at the Nathaniel Windsor Junior House, 479 Washington Street, Duxbury, and contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next, we have a Jordan Hospital Club Duxbury Lawn Party. And again, this looks to be all in order. It's been going on for now 50 years.
right.
I'll entertain a motion.
I move that Ms. Katie Rudicus, thank you, as a representative of the Jordan Hospital Club, is granted a 1-day all-alcohol license for their Duxbury Lawn Party on Friday, June 14, 2024, from 6 p.m. till 8 p.m. at the residence of John and Kate Rudicious, 160 King Caesar Road, Duxbury, and contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Next, we have South Shore Conservatory Duxbury Music Festival for a number of dates, contingent upon the conditions of the license. Again, this has come up in a number of years in a row. I have no questions. Do any of my fellow board members, or are you ready for a motion?
Ready?
All right.
I move that Ms. Sharon Bohan, as a representative of the South Shore Conservatory, is granted a one-day wine and malt license for the Duxbury Music Festival to be held at the South Shore Conservatory, Elliston Center for the Arts, 64 St. George Street, on the following dates and contingent upon the conditions of the license. Sunday, July 14, 2024, from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Tuesday, July 16, 2024, from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m. Wednesday, July 17, 2024, from 5:30 p.m. to 7 o'clock p.m. And Friday, July 19, 2024, from 6:30 p.m. to 8:30 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We might have to have somebody recuse himself here. Marshfield Country Club, Boys and Girls Club, Golf
me.
Classic. Yeah. I heard somebody might be El Presidente.
Yeah, as a current president of the Marshfield Country Club, I suppose I better recuse myself.
You may want to.
Even though I mistakenly signed and approved it.
All right, we'll
I
cross
believe
that
my
off.
signature, sorry about that.
This is only for the cart that's going to be parked in Duxbury. This isn't for,
This is
we're not
correct.
extending our jurisdiction to the town of Marshfield.
No, it's the part that
Don't go overboard.
dips over.
Right.
And Boys and Girls Club obviously is a nonprofit.
Yep.
And I have no other questions.
I move that Mr. Paul Tugas, as representative of the Marshfield Country Club, is granted a one-day wine and malt license for their Boys and Girls Club of Marshfield 2024 Golf Classic to be held at the Marshfield Country Club, 515 Moraine Street, Marshfield, on Monday, June 24, 2024, from 10 a.m. to 8 p.m., and contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
One abstention.
Okay. Next, we have a outstanding in the field dinner located at 160 Marshall Street, a private residence. Do any of my fellow board members have any questions?
I have a point of order on this one, Mr. Chairman. In the materials that were presented to us, the applicant, as I understand, is a California corporation. And my understanding is that this corporation is not registered to engage in business in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Its registration in Massachusetts was actually revoked in 2021, according to the records of the Secretary of the Commonwealth. So I don't know that the applicant before us has the ability to file an application with us. Okay.
All right. Would that person like to
What's that? Right there on the wall.
explain that question?
Hi. Hello.
Hello.
This is Seth Heitzermetter from a representative for Outstanding in the Field. Select board member, I'm sorry, I'm unfortunately unable to see the name on your name card whenever it comes up. But the question about our registration in the state of Massachusetts, I think that's something that I will need to come back and follow up with the board on. I mean, we've been doing business in the state of Massachusetts for a number of years, including the last year, and paid taxes to the state of Massachusetts. So we did have an LLC registered many years ago, but the company is an S Corp registered based in California, but we operate in many states around the U.S.
Well, I hear what you're saying, but you were registered in Massachusetts, but you were revoked by the Secretary of the Commonwealth. I'm just looking at the legal name of the application.
Sure.
You applied as Outstanding in the Field, Inc., and I searched for Outstanding in the Field, Inc., given you're a California corporation. You were registered in Massachusetts for a number of years, but it was revoked in 2021. So we can only entertain applications from legal, either individuals or legally authorized entities. I just don't see that you're a legally authorized entity in Commonwealth of Massachusetts.
Understandable. Is there a process to follow up if the business name was listed incorrectly, where it wouldn't necessarily should have been listed as Outstanding in the Field LLC?
I don't know.
I can't provide you that kind of
I mean,
advice.
sorry, that was more for this particular application for this event in August.
Well, I think we might have some other issues.
All right, why don't we start
why
on the
don't
other
we
ones?
Put this.
Okay, so
aside?
bottom line is, Inc. doesn't have a license to operate, so they have to answer that one, right?
Well, they have to be registered with the Secretary of State.
State, yeah.
Right.
And
Okay.
they're not.
They're not, all right,
But I think there are some other
correct.
significant issues that would make me a no vote. First of all, this violates our zoning bylaw. This is a commercial use in a residential area. This is not a not-for-profit or charitable event. This is a pay for a plate of food, and that is a prohibited use in a residential district. There's also a memo here from our conservation agent regarding some conservation issues that would prohibit this activity as well. So I think that along with the fact that they are not a registered corporation, those are some issues that would give me a reason to say no to this.
I'm also looking here from the Board of Health. If the Board of Health wishes to continue with enforcement as ordered, then you should not, in my opinion, sign off on an event. So there's a ongoing legal issue between the Board of Health and the 160. Whatever.
Yeah, there's a
160 Marshall, right? There's a legal,
Yeah.
apparently about the systems, and also the zoning. Our Director of Municipal Services,
Right.
Building Commissioner, given these factors, in my opinion, the proposed event would not be allowable use from a zoning perspective for what you said. So they just pile up, lots of stuff as to why this shouldn't be approved.
Does anybody have any other questions? I know we have a member of the audience that would like to say something, but any other board members have any questions?
I don't see an LLC listed either.
Really?
I just checked it on the Secretary of State's website. There's only 2 entities, and both have been revoked, so I don't know what to tell you.
So it's maybe the conversation's moot.
Well, that's an issue between them and their counsel, I think. that
Yeah.
Somebody needs to handle it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. My name is David Udy. I represent 2 homeowners that are right in close proximity to this property, William and Jenny Rice and Carl and Joanne Kuntz. You can kind of conceptualize the way this neighborhood works is you have Marshall Street, and then you have a 1-lane narrow road that leads to this property at 160, and my clients' homes are on the way to the party. There's a long history here, as I'm sure some of you or all of you are aware of. This began a zoning enforcement action when we brought evidence before Mr. Wazalewski, the zoning enforcement officer, that they were having, in our belief, an illegal bed and breakfast operation at the property. The bylaw requires a special permit for that. And we presented evidence that they were hosting commercial events at the property, and the property is zoned in the RC district, which doesn't allow for commercial events. So we brought a zoning enforcement action that was appealed to the ZBA, and the ZBA issued a clear directive and saying, and I'll quote, and I have the documentation here if you want it, I don't want to overload you with paper, but essentially the ZBA ordered that orders that a cease and desist letter be issued ordering the owners to cease all existing and future commercial activity at the property. And the date of this is, there's a public hearing on January 26, 2023, and the decision date's March 17, 2023. Interestingly, some of the evidence that we presented to the ZBA was the fact that they had just had a massive outstanding in the field event at their property, selling tickets between $300 and $400 per ticket. So the very basis of this ZBA decision saying, don't do that again, they're literally applying to the select board to do it again. And on the heels of that, Mr. Wazalewski issued a cease and desist order to the owners of 160 Marshall Street, dated March 17th, 2023. It says, you are hereby ordered to immediately cease and desist all commercial uses on the property now and any and all future commercial uses. So despite the fact that the ZBA said, don't do it, on the heels of this same event, and then Mr. Wazalewski said, don't do it, again, on the heels of that decision, they're doing it. And this has been, in our opinion, a pattern of behavior with these property owners for my clients. It's been very difficult. I submitted a letter to this board and other town boards, and I'll just get the date of it, just so it's in the record real quick. On March 22nd, 2024, via electronic mail. And we presented evidence from the Outstanding in the Field website showing the advertising for this property, for this event. They're now selling tickets for approximately $425 per ticket per head for this event at the property. And it's a massive event. There are hundreds of people that show up. It's a long party. There are buses going up and down this lane. There are buses idling at the end of the road long into the night. It makes it very difficult for my clients to kind of peacefully enjoy their property. So we ask that the select board take notice of this, deny this request, and instruct these owners and others, if they're going to have commercial events on the property, to make sure that they show how zoning-wise they're allowed to do it. Thank you.
Thank you. Just one question, Council. Any of those cease and desist orders of the ZBA's findings, were any of those appealed?
No, I failed to mention that. None of them were appealed.
Okay.
I have copies of, they're back-to-back, if I can approach and just give them to you.
Of course, yeah. You can always approach the witness.
Yeah, so basically, I made a copy for each of you, but the cease and desist and the ZBA decision is back-to-back there. The ZBA order on this is in the second to last page, but Mr. Wazalewski's cease and desist order is very clear. So we'd ask that you deny this. In addition, there's an ongoing action for the Conservation Commission. The entire property is either in a protected resource area and/or a buffer zone. So if you look at the application, they want to install a kitchen on the property. They want to have all these other infrastructure for this event, including down on the sand, basically, on the flats down there. So the Conservation Commission, we were in front of them on this. They expressed concern as well. And you're right, there's an ongoing lawsuit. The Husks have sued the town, the Board of Health, because the Board of Health has required them to put a septic system, because there's no functioning septic system on the property. There's a cesspool or cesspit.
But there's no functioning septic system?
No, it's a grandfathered cesspit on the property, and they have a lot of outbuildings and other structures. In addition to that, they've brought in 2 trailers to the property, and Mr. Wazalewski has issued an order for them to remove these trailers because the ZBA determined that they're in the WPOD, and you need a special permit before you do that, and they denied them, and they have filed a lawsuit against the town challenging Mr. Wazalewski's order for the removal of the 2 trailers as well.
So maybe they're hoping to get this event so they can gather $425 to pay for all the lawyers' fees in all these suits.
And my understanding is they brought a lawsuit against you too.
Yeah.
So there's 3 active lawsuits that they brought against, that they have against them, which is fine, but that's what the history.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. I think we've received enough evidence on that are relevant to this permit. I will give the applicant a chance here, who's raised a hand.
CJ.
Go right ahead, sir. I see a CJ, if you wouldn't mind stating your full name and street address.
Yeah, Charles Husk, 160 Marshall Street. I'm not the applicant. The Outstanding in the Field organization's the applicant. I just allow them to come in. I just want to clarify that I don't make any money at this. This is not a for-profit for me at all. Just want to clarify that. I don't think I've ever gotten a chance to clarify that. I do not make any money. I know you're joking about that. And you've determined that without, I don't think I've ever had a chance to state that that is not, in fact, the case. I know David likes to create these stories that he makes all these boards listen to, wasting an incredible amount of time. But I've always been doing this event for a number of years, almost 10 years. And it's only now that all of a sudden that it's an issue. I find that very interesting. Also, we are planning to do it. We haven't had a chance, you haven't had a chance to hear that we were planning to do it as a nonprofit. we haven't neglected to appropriately notify you of that. That is our fault. I just want to let you know that we were planning on taking the ticket proceeds for the some of the whatever we make on the event and put it towards the Duxbury Beach preservation because that's that's what allows for us to enjoy that area. And as far as conservation, I'll have to talk to them about it, but we've been doing that event for years in the past, and I'll have to involve our engineer with that. And it's never been an issue for conservation in the past, and so I don't really know what their specific comments would be about this time. But I'll follow up with them about that as well. But I just want to reiterate that it is not a for-profit event. I know you think it is. I know people think that it is. It is not. And the neighbors have been, I've always invited the neighbors to the event. The neighbors have been to the event. They enjoyed the event, as far as I know. It sounds like they've decided all of a sudden not to. They told me they have. So, yeah, that's where we're at. I think my friends will have to reapply. It's always been a wonderful event for everyone to go to. The townspeople have enjoyed it. Everyone seems to have liked it. So I don't think that it's appropriate for a couple people to ruin it for the whole town. If that's what you want to do, it's fine. But
Sir, we'll have to bring back the paperwork and rework it if we're allowed to. Yeah.
That's clear.
Mr. Husk, I'm just going to cut you off a little bit. We had a number of concerns.
That's all right, I'm done. It's fine.
Yeah, we had a number of concerns based on the permit itself and
yeah, I
comments.
understand that. Yeah, well, I guess we could try to. We're far more than 45 days out, and we'll have to reapply and rework that paperwork.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, guys.
I'll let Mr. Heisenbrader give his response to any of those comments that we had. But yeah, go right ahead.
Of course, thank you. In addition, I just wanted to note as far as the ticket price for the event and what goes into the production of the events that we produce, and also just to give you a little bit of background about our company and what we do and the intention of what we are doing. The organization was started in 1999 in Santa Cruz, California by a chef at the time, whose brother was one of the first organic farmers in the state of California. And we started hosting our events then with the intent of reconnecting diners at that point to the source of where their ingredients were coming from for the food that was on their table. And it's been noted by many influential people in the farm-to-table scene that that Outstanding in the Field has been very influential around the United States and bringing the concept and the idea of the benefits to the local economy and the local sourcing of ingredients for the food that we eat. Everywhere we go, the guests that attend our events. We have about half of the attendees of a 200-person event that are from the local area, and another half that are folks that are traveling in to participate in our event. And beyond the money that they spend on the ticket price, the guests are also staying in local hotels and participating in local activities in the area. And so for us, the holistic approach to what we're doing is a way to celebrate local destinations around the United States and create a celebratory experience in a unique place that is also going to have greater impacts in the local economy as well, to benefit those that the local food restaurants and people that fit within that model, to people that are very interested in foodies, you could say. When it comes to our ticket price, of the $425, $75 of that goes to our year-round staff that works on producing 120 events that we do all around the United States. And that also incorporates the costs of our general operations, lodging, and infrastructure for our company, as well as the salaries and benefits for the staff. For this event in particular, $100 of this goes towards the shuttles that we pay for the off-site parking for the 30-minute window before and after the event when the guests are coming in and departing. The rentals for the infrastructure for the event costs $40 per person. The staff, which includes a lot of local service staff from the local community, contributes about $25 to $50 of that $425. $50 of that $50 per person goes to the food from the local farms in the area around Boston and Massachusetts that is incorporated into the meal, and $35 of that goes towards the cost for the chef and their team to come out and produce the meal. We also have a traveling crew that goes around the country to produce all of these events that we do, and that contributes another $25 to $30 per person, and many other events that go to producing these off-site events. It's a lot, I know, and we do these events everywhere. I know that the ticket price is a sticker shock. Right now, the amount for the cost for food and experiences in our country is quite challenging. I mean, I'm trying to just give you a general breakdown of what all of that goes into that.
Sir,
But I appreciate your taking the time to hear my thoughts, and we'll reapply under our nonprofit foundation, Out Giving in the Field, which has donated over $1 million to various organizations around the U.S. focused on nature, food, and farming. And hopefully this event that has been approved for the past 8 years can be reconsidered, as a beneficial event to the community of Duxbury and those that are coming in to visit and appreciate the area.
All right, thank you very much. Is the board ready for a vote?
Yes.
I'll take a motion.
Okay. I move that Ms. Claire Rock, as a representative of Outstanding in the Field, is granted a one-day wine and malt license for a dinner event to be held at the property of Charles J. Husk, 160 Marshall Street, Duxbury, Massachusetts, on Saturday, August 17th, 2024, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m., contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Second.
Any discussion, further discussion? All those in favor? Say nay.
Or all those opposed?
Opposed. All those opposed?
Aye.
Nay.
Nay.
Nay, I am opposed, right?
You're voting aye on nay?
Let me just,
They just,
Nay.
are we all, is it unanimous that
It's
we're all opposed?
unanimously opposed.
Okay.
unanimously opposed,
All right,
correct.
thank you. It's late.
It's very late.
Way late.
All right. We have 4th of July committee, 4th of July parade. I'm ready for a motion on that.
Okay.
Let's do it this year.
I move that the Town of Duxbury 4th of July Committee is granted permission to hold the annual 4th of July parade and related events, including the beach party, in the Town of Duxbury, contingent upon the conditions of the license.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Abstain.
We have minutes.
We do them
Open
next
session
time.
minutes.
Next time.
Yeah, we
You
can.
don't want to hear my changes?
Yeah, we always like your changes.
Oh, it's not getting any later. That'd be great.
All right, fine.
I'll skip the minutes and let's do suggested announcements.
Okay. Announcements. Number one, in partnership with the Old Colony Planning Council, our regional planning agency, the Town of Duxbury is updating its open space and recreation plan. This updated document, which complements the comprehensive plan, will be used as a guide as we continue to protect open space and enhance our recreational projects and programs. The updated open space and recreation plan will also qualify the town for state grants. Your opinion will impact Duxbury's future and help shape the use of our town's open space and recreational areas. Please share your thoughts by spending a few minutes completing the Open Space and Recreation Plan survey, which can be found on the Conservation Department's website, on the town's website at www.town.duxbury.ma.us. If you have any questions, please feel free to contact Nancy Rufo, Conservation Administrator, at 781-986-0800. 934-1100, extension 5470, or email her at rufo@duxbury-ma.gov. Number 2, the next scheduled Select Board's meeting will be on Monday, June 10, 2024, at 7 o'clock p.m.
Thank you. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Nay.